Chapter 777. Morongyu was horrified. He instantly increased his strength to the limit, turned around, and punched out fiercely. His physical body was very strong, but the strength of the quasi-god-level giant snake was even more terrifying. If Morongyu was hit by its tail, his body would certainly be smashed into a bloody mist. Boom! Divine light erupted from Morongyu's hands, and his momentum soared into the sky. In an instant, he collided with the giant snake's tail, which contained the power to destroy heaven and earth, and an earth-shattering explosion erupted. Crack! Morongyu's power was still unable to withstand a single blow, and his hands were once again smashed into pieces. One of his hands had been smashed into pieces before, but it had long since recovered. Although his hands had been smashed into pieces, they had at least slightly blocked the giant snake's attack. The snake's tail paused for a moment when the two sides collided. In that instant, Morongyu stepped into the air, shattered billions of space-time, and retreated billions of kilometers. Rumble. The moment Morongyu retreated, the giant snake's tail finally lashed out. However, Morongyu had already fled far away. The giant snake's tail could only lash out at the nearby void. Walala. The world within a radius of billions of kilometers was instantly smashed into pieces. Large tracts of space collapsed. Islands sank, seas dried up, and rocks crumbled. Morongyu quickly took a step forward as a frightening power surged towards him. However, he was still hit by the aftermath of the power. With a puff, Morongyu spat out another mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Bastard! Although his internal organs seemed to have been shattered, this was only a minor injury to him. He was angry only because he was suppressed by a quasi-god. He hadn't felt this way for a long time. Bastard! If you chase me again, do you believe I won't kill you? Morongyu was really angry. You must die today. A sinister and cold voice rang out. At the same time, the giant snake's huge tail lashed out, shattering the void with a shocking momentum. Morongyu was shocked. This was the first time he had heard the giant snake speak. It was too eerie and cold. It even made Morongyu's hair stand on end. However, what puzzled him was that this giant snake had already reached the quasi-god realm. Could it be that it still couldn't take human form? It's good that you can talk. Morongyu sneered in his heart. Then he shouted, Little worm, if you keep chasing me, I'll definitely kill you. Get out of my sight now. As he spoke, Morongyu's hand once again grew out and grabbed at the air. In the next moment, the cosmos bow and the heaven-shaking arrow appeared in his hands. When the heaven and earth bow and the heaven-shaking arrow appeared in Morongyu's hands, they involuntarily trembled and emitted rings of golden light, as if they were excited. A powerful aura pressed down on the giant snake. At this moment, the giant snake's heart skipped a beat, because it felt a trace of threat from the heaven and earth bow and the heaven-shaking arrow. The threat of death. These are divine weapons. A trace of fear appeared in the giant snake's heart, but more than that, it was greed. If I can get this divine bow and divine arrow, who in the immortal world can be my opponent? I will definitely be able to dominate the world. The divine bow and divine arrow are mine. Although the giant serpent was afraid, its greed had the absolute upper hand. It immediately suppressed the fear in its heart. Boom! Its tail lashed out and fiercely attacked Morongyu. It wanted to kill Morongyu. As long as it killed Morongyu, the heaven and earth bow and heaven-shaking arrow would be its. Seeing the giant snake's triangular eyes flashing, how could Morongyu not know what the giant snake was thinking? Bastard, chasing me so hard. Today I'll kill the snake. Morongyu was furious. He fiercely knocked the bow and pulled the arrow back. The bow was like a full moon, clang after a crisp sound. The heaven-shaking arrow turned into a streak of golden light. It locked onto the giant snake in the distance and directly tore through the void. At this moment, a strong sense of danger rose in the giant snake's heart. Chi! Almost at the same time, Morongyu released the arrow. The void in front of the giant snake's head fiercely tore open. A streak of golden light suddenly shot out from the void and shot towards the giant snake's head like lightning. What a terrifying aura! The giant snake's heart was filled with shock, but within the shock, there was also horror. The stronger the heaven and earth bow and heaven-shaking arrow were, the happier it was, because they would soon belong to it. However, although the giant snake was happy, it still had to block the heaven-shaking arrow in front of it. If it couldn't block it, a quasi-god, would be shot to death. In the distance, Murong sneered. I want to see if you are really invincible in the quasi-god realm. The heaven-shaking arrow automatically locked onto the target. As long as the target didn't die, it would continue to attack. In the past, Murong used the heaven-shaking arrow to kill almost all of its targets in an instant. The power of the divine arrow is shocking, but it is mine now. The giant snake's sinister voice sounded. Then a big hand suddenly reached out from under the water and grabbed at the heaven-shaking arrow that was shooting over. A hand? A snake has a hand? Seeing this scene, Murong couldn't help but frown slightly. However, he sneered and knocked an arrow on his bow once more. The large hand that reached out from the water was green. It was covered with green scales and emitted an incomparably powerful aura. Wherever it passed, the void was shattered. The speed of the green hand was extremely fast. It blocked the front of the heaven-shaking arrow and then grabbed the heaven-shaking arrow. The heaven-shaking arrow was caught by the giant snake's hand, and it actually stopped. Seeing this, the giant snake was shocked. This divine arrow was clearly shot with an aura that made its heart palpitate. But why was it so weak now? However, no matter what, the heaven-shaking arrow was caught by it. Haha, the divine arrow is mine from now on. The giant snake laughed loudly. Its laughter was sinister and terrifying. You don't know what's good for you. Murong, who was in the distance, sneered without changing his expression. While laughing, the giant snake wanted to take the heaven-shaking arrow away. However, at this moment, an extremely dangerous aura suddenly rose from the bottom of its heart. Oh no! The giant snake roared in its heart and exerted force in its large hand. However, it was already too late. The heaven-shaking arrow in its hand suddenly exploded with a golden light that soared into the sky. It was like the sun in the sky, and the divine light was dazzling. At the same time, a vast and terrifying aura like that of an ancient god erupted from the heaven-shaking arrow. Boom! The giant snake's large hand was directly shattered by the power of the heaven-shaking arrow. The intense pain caused the giant snake to involuntarily let out a miserable cry. After shattering the giant snake's large hand, the heaven-shaking arrow once again locked onto the giant snake's head and shot out. Get out of my way! Feeling the terrifying aura of the heaven-shaking arrow, the giant snake roared angrily. Another large hand stretched out from its abdomen and punched towards the heaven-shaking arrow. At the same time, the snake tail that was chasing Murong suddenly retracted and directly whipped towards the heaven-shaking arrow. See if I don't kill you today. Didn't you have a lot of fun chasing me just now? Murong sneered and shot out the heaven-shaking arrow in his hand. This time, he didn't lock onto the giant snake's head, but the snake's tail. This was not the end. After shooting out the arrow, Murong snorted coldly. His large hand grabbed in the air, and the third and final heaven-shaking arrow appeared in his hand. Then he pulled the bow into a full moon shape and locked onto the giant snake's weak point and shot it fiercely. Hit the snake's weak point. Even if the giant snake was a super expert at the quasi-god level, its weak point should be its weak point. Two heaven-shaking arrows shot toward the giant snake almost at the same time. Each arrow carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth, and it really made this part of the world tremble. Feeling the terrifying aura of the heaven-shaking arrow, the giant snake's heart trembled, and a sense of fear welled up in it. However, he was a super expert at the quasi-god level after all. His reaction and strength were very powerful. Boundless Sea. The giant snake roared angrily, and more than 5 million Earth Dragon power burst out, stirring up heaven and earth. The heaven and earth essence chi was also twisted by him. Suddenly, Murong saw the boundless sea under his feet rolling fiercely. Waves of water soared into the sky and condensed, crazily bombarding the heaven-shaking arrow. Boom, 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 boom. The waves were not as simple as just waves. They also contained the giant snake's 5 million earth dragon power. Every wave washed away some of the power of the heaven-shaking arrow. At the same time, the giant snake quickly shrank and retreated. Morong Yu frowned slightly. He saw the power of the heaven-shaking arrow gradually diminishing under the impact of these waves. A quasi-god is a quasi-god after all. The heaven-shaking arrow has been bombarded by him before it could reach him. Now it seems that it still can't kill a quasi-god. Morong Yu shook his head and then turned around. He tore the void with one hand and stepped into the void, disappearing above the EC. The giant snake retreated quickly. The terrifying power of the quasi-god level constantly burst out, constantly washing away the heaven-shaking arrow. Looking at the gradually diminishing power of the heaven-shaking arrow, the giant snake was delighted. It did not notice that the target it was chasing after had disappeared. "Haha, these divine arrows are all mine." The giant snake laughed and stretched out its big hand, fiercely grabbing the heaven-shaking arrow in front of it. At this time, the heaven-shaking arrow was not as powerful as before. With the strength of the giant snake, it could completely suppress it. What's going on? Just as the giant snake stretched out its big hand, it suddenly found that the heaven-shaking arrow in front of it shook violently and sank into the void, disappearing before its eyes. At the same time, the other 2 heaven-shaking arrows did the same. Disappeared. The giant snake's triangular eyes frowned slightly and inadvertently glanced at Morong Yu's side. With this glance, he was immediately exposed. Escaped? He actually escaped. How dare he? The giant snake roared crazily. It was so angry that the surrounding void shattered. The sea flowed backward, and the sea dried up. Miracle! He must have gone out for the miracle. This time I must kill you. The giant snake roared crazily. Not long after, the giant snake disappeared on the spot. A young man about 20 years old soared into the sky and rushed toward the miracle. Chapter 778. In the depths of the East Sea, the surface of the sea was turbulent. Tens of thousands of huge waves soared into the sky, and even the void was shattered by the terrifying power contained in the waves. Above the sea, thunderclouds were dense. Dense thunderbolts bombarded like raindrops, endless and endless, covering the entire sky. Whoosh! Suddenly, a crack appeared in the void amidst the thunderbolts. Then, a figure stepped out of the void. This person was Morong Yu, who had escaped the pursuit of the giant quasi-god snake. Previously, after he had directly torn the void to escape the quasi-god snake, he did not stop. Instead, he continued to tear the void. Hurrying like this was much faster than flying directly. Most importantly, there were too many powerful sea beasts in the EC. Ever since he had encountered the quasi-god snake, Morong Yu did not want to provoke these powerful sea beasts. After all, his goal was only the god's relic, not these sea beasts. However, flying above the East Sea was bound to encounter some sea beasts. After all, humans had no intention of harming the sea beasts, but the sea beasts wanted to harm humans. If the two sides were to fight, it would be like Morong Yu's previous encounter. He had killed an ordinary celestial prime, but had attracted a quasi-god super expert. Morong Yu directly tore the void and escaped hundreds of millions of miles away, directly avoiding contact with many sea beasts. However, after tearing the void more than 10 times without any accidents, this time, Morong Yu finally encountered an accident. As he took a step forward, a sky full of divine lightning came crashing down, intending to shatter Morong Yu into pieces. Suddenly, he encountered so many densely packed divine thunderbolts bombarding him. Morong Yu was immediately startled, thinking that he had been ambushed. Therefore, he immediately raised his strength to the limit and spread out his divine consciousness, wanting to check the situation around him. However, rumble, Murong Yu's divine consciousness had just spread out when endless divine thunderbolts bombarded his divine consciousness. In an instant, the divine sense that Murong Yu had sent out was easily shattered. Murong Yu's body shook, and his face revealed a look of surprise. These divine thunderbolts can even shatter divine consciousness. After being surprised, Murong Yu's face changed again. Could this be the legendary thunderstorm area? The thunderstorm area was in the depths of the East Sea. It was boundless and covered the entire East Sea for hundreds of millions of miles. If one wanted to go deeper into the East Sea, one would have to pass through the thunderstorm area. However, the thunderstorm area was too big. It was so big that it was almost boundless. Not everyone had the ability to walk through this area. Moreover, the divine thunderbolts of the thunderbolts were not as simple as ordinary thunderbolts. The power contained in these divine lightning bolts is extremely powerful. Even ordinary immortal venerables would be killed if they are careless. After confirming that this was only the thunderstorm area of the East Sea, Murong Yu relaxed and allowed the endless divine thunderbolts to bombard his body. Ordinary immortals would be incomparably terrified by the divine lightning, but when it struck Murong Yu's body, it couldn't harm him in the slightest. In fact, Murong Yu even revealed an expression of enjoyment and comfort. Every time he broke through a major realm, Murong Yu would be attacked by the heavenly tribulation. The stronger one was, the more terrifying the tribulation lightning would be. Although the thunderstorm area of the East Sea was terrifying, but compared to the tribulation lightning, when an immortal king becomes an immortal lord, the divine thunderbolts in the thunderstorm area are simply too weak. They can't even temper the body. Murong Yu shook his head, not thinking much of it. Murong Yu's body had already reached the level of an emperor weapon. Although the divine thunderbolts were powerful, they could not temper Murong Yu's body. Therefore, Murong Yu felt that it was a pity. Legend has it that apart from the endless divine thunderbolts in the thunderstorm area, there's also a type of powerful lightning beast. However, other than myself, where else can I find other life forms? Murong Yu took a step forward and flew toward the depths of the thunderstorm area. The divine sight was not in the thunderstorm area, but in the depths of the thunderstorm area. In order to reach the divine sight, one had to pass through the thunderstorm area. Roar! Not long after Murong Yu leisurely shuttled through the thunderstorm area, an earth-shattering sound rang out. Following that, Murong Yu saw demonic beasts with horns on their heads, scales all over their bodies, and lightning bolts all over their bodies. These demonic beasts roared as they charged out from the depths of the thunderclouds, viciously biting Murong Yu. I've heard that these lightning beasts love to eat human flesh. Looks like it's true. Murong Yu sneered when he saw the lightning beasts pouncing on him. He did not dodge. Instead, he stood where he was and looked at the lightning beasts that were charging at him. They're so fast. Just a moment ago, the lightning beast was still over 100 million miles away. However, in less than an instant, it had traversed through space and time and appeared in front of Murong Yu. It opened its bloody maw and bit down on Murong Yu. These lightning beasts can control lightning. Murong Yu's face was filled with astonishment. Earlier, when he saw the lightning beast pouncing on him, the lightning bolts surged into its body. Some of the lightning bolts even increased the lightning beast's speed like the wind pushing on the sails of a boat. It could be said that the lightning beast's speed was so fast partly because of the lightning bolts. The lightning beast has mastered the law of lightning. Murong Yu looked at the huge mouth of the lightning beast that was about to swallow him. He did not react, but frowned and pondered. There were many laws in the world. The law of time, the law of space, and the law of lightning were all one of them. No matter what kind of law one mastered, one's strength would increase by a lot. For example, Murong Yu had only grasped the surface of the law of space. However, he could fend off a quasi-god expert for a while. This was only the surface of the law of space. If he could completely master the law of space, he would be invincible in the world. If the lightning beast really does control the laws of lightning. Murong Yu's heart suddenly lit up. Then, he abruptly stretched out his hand and pressed down on the lightning beast that was charging at him, ready to devour him. Suddenly, the lightning beast that had reached the immortal venerable realm felt that it was stopped in its tracks. A powerful force suppressed it, and it could not move. I can also trigger the power of the heavenly tribulation. Although I don't know if the tribulation lightning has anything to do with ordinary lightning. However, if the lightning beast can control lightning, I can study it. Maybe I can also master the law of lightning. Morong Yu's heart stirred. The power of his big hand gushed out and sealed the lightning beast's power. Then, he threw it into the Hichu Luoshu world. The lightning beast that had reached the immortal venerable realm was sealed by Morong Yu in an instant. If other people saw this scene, they would be so shocked that their jaws would drop to the ground. After all, not only was the lightning beast's physical body very strong, but the power of lightning they controlled was also very terrifying. Ordinary immortal experts of the same level were no match for the lightning beast. After all, cultivators were most afraid of the power of lightning. The oppressive might of thunder and lightning was the best way to oppress them. Moreover, it was not just pressure. Ordinary people would find it hard to resist the bombardment of lightning from the sky. This was because the power of lightning was the same as the power of fire. They were both violent and destructive. One lightning beast isn't enough. Morong Yu looked around, then took a step forward and continued to move forward. However, Morong Yu didn't deliberately look for lightning beasts. Along the way, he would encounter lightning beasts. Whether it was the lightning beast of the immortal emperor realm, early or intermediate immortal venerable realm, Morong Yu would subdue them in one move and throw them into the Hichu Luoshu world. As for the lightning beast of the late immortal venerable realm, it was very powerful. With Morong Yu's strength, it was impossible to subdue it. Along the way, he encountered late immortal venerable lightning beast twice. After these two battles, Morong Yu knew that he couldn't subdue late immortal venerable lightning beasts. Therefore, he would take a detour when he encountered late immortal venerable lightning beasts. However, when he stepped out of the thunderstorm area, there were 10 more lightning beasts in the Hichu Luoshu world. These lightning beasts were the foundation for Morong Yu's comprehension of lightning law. After crossing the boundless thunderstorm area, there was still an endless sea. Of course, Morong Yu didn't want to explore the end of the East Sea. This was because the location of the miracle was 1 billion miles away from the thunderstorm area. When Morong Yu tore the void and appeared on this huge island, it could be considered a continent. It was about the size of 100 continents in the immortal world. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Asterisk as soon as Morong Yu set foot on this continent, he could feel earth-shattering noises coming from the depths of the continent. Waves of energy that made one's heart palpitate constantly spread out, shaking the heavens and the earth. Most of the super experts in the immortal world had gathered on this continent. Currently, the immortal world was divided into the Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance. Once the people of these two alliances met, they would launch the most violent attacks. They wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. In addition, once a treasure appeared, there would be even more experts among experts. It wasn't just between the opposing alliances, but also between the allies. It could be said that this continent was full of danger. It was a land of slaughter, even crueler than the battlefields in the immortal world. After all, this continent was full of experts. As soon as Morong Yu stepped on the ground, he didn't even have time to look at his surroundings. A terrifying blade light slashed out from not far away, shattering the void and ruthlessly slashing at Morong Yu, killing to steal the treasure. You're courting death. A cold glint flashed between Morong Yu's brows. Without even looking, he violently threw a punch. Chapter 779. How can a mere late immortal monarch cross the thunderstorm zone and come to Dan King Continent? But now, your life is coming to an end. I, an early immortal venerable, have ambushed you. You should be able to rest in peace now. In a secret place 1,000,000 miles away from Morong Yu, an early immortal venerable stared coldly at Morong Yu. After killing you, I'll be able to get your pills, and immortal veins. The thunderstorm zone is too terrifying. Although you've passed through it safely, you've consumed too much of your energy. All your immortal veins and other things that replenish your immortal chi have been used up. If an immortal monarch can step foot on Dan King continent, you must have a lot of immortal veins. Although it's a little shameful for an immortal venerable to ambush you. I like it. Huh? He was the one who had slashed out that saber light earlier. As an experienced immortal venerable, he slashed out with all his strength, even though his opponent was only a late immortal monarch. However, his control over his power was also very good. His slash would only kill Murong-Yu, but it wouldn't shatter the storage ring on Murong-Yu's hand. Die, brat. The early immortal venerable stared at Murong-Yu excitedly. However, when he saw Murong-Yu punching out at the incoming blade light, his face revealed a trace of disdain. How could a late immortal monarch block the attack of an early immortal venerable? It was simply impossible. However, in the next instant, the disdain on his face vanished and was replaced by shock. How is this possible? Breaking my full-strength saber with a single punch? The early immortal venerable widened his eyes, full of fear, disbelief, and disbelief. I've encountered an expert. The early immortal venerable reacted extremely quickly. After recovering from his shock, he turned and shot towards the distance in a flash. Still trying to escape? Murong-Yu's cold voice resounded in the ear of the early immortal venerable. At the same time, a monstrous palm blotted out the sky and covered the entire sky. It carried a terrifying aura that could destroy the heavens and earth, grabbing towards the early immortal venerable with lightning speed. Air! Before the early immortal venerable could take half a step forward, Murong-Yu's huge hand had already pressed down on his neck. Senior, don't kill! The early immortal venerable was terrified. Just as he was about to beg for mercy, before he could finish, Murong-Yu clenched his fist. With a loud bang, the early immortal venerable was crushed by Murong-Yu. You're courting death. Murong-Yu retracted his hand and snorted disdainfully. What terrifying power! After Murong-Yu crushed the early immortal venerable, some of the nearby experts were stunned. Each of them stared at Murong-Yu in horror. Haha, senior, we were just passing by. We didn't mean to offend you. Farewell. Voices were heard one after another. One figure after another soared into the sky and flew away. They really didn't dare to stay here any longer. Murong-Yu's strength had made them tremble with fear. Humph! Murong-Yu harumphed coldly. One of the reasons why he killed the early immortal venerable was because he wanted to intimidate these people. At the same time, Murong-Yu was indeed angry at the immortal venerable who sneakily attacked him. He's just an early immortal venerable. So what if he's dead? Murong-Yu took a step forward and slowly walked towards the depths of the continent. Yes, he was walking towards it. To the current Murong-Yu, an early immortal venerable was too weak to be controlled by him. His strength was too weak, and most importantly, he knew that his soul could not endlessly control others. The stronger one was, the harder it was to control them. An early immortal venerable wasn't of much use to the current Murong-Yu. Instead of wasting a position, he might as well use it to control mid and late immortal venerables. This was because Murong-Yu didn't know how many immortal venerables he could control. Moreover, as long as Murong-Yu obtained the breaking venerable pill in Dan King continent, a large number of immortal venerables would emerge in Shenzhen. Those immortal venerables would be absolutely loyal to him. They wouldn't need Murong-Yu to control them. Sun Haoshan, Nangongjun, and the rest are here. Murong-Yu sensed their presence while walking. It didn't take long for all the late and intermediate immortal venerables under his control to arrive at Dan King continent. As a matter of fact, there weren't many mid and late immortal venerables under Murong-Yu's control. However, these people had arrived here before Murong-Yu. Moreover, they had arrived here with their respective forces. Thus, they had some understanding of Dan King continent. Immediately, these people transmitted all the information they knew to Murong-Yu. Dan King continent. Murong-Yu's brows furrowed slightly, but they soon relaxed. No wonder there's a fragrance in the air. So it's the fragrance of medicinal pills. No wonder the immortal chi here is denser than in the immortal world. Morong Yu was enlightened. The Elixir King continent was the territory of an ancient sect. This sect was the Dan sect that dominated the immortal world. A continent with 100 continents in the immortal world was only the Dan sect's territory? In this place, the Dan sect was the absolute overlord. Not only that, the Dan sect was the overlord of the immortal world. They had ruled the immortal world for countless eras. However, the Dan sect had suddenly disappeared. All of them disappeared overnight. Even the Dan King continent was gone. Not long ago, the Dan King continent had reappeared in the East Ocean. However, there wasn't a single person left on the continent. The once glorious Dan sect had completely disappeared. Not a single person was left. The entire Dan King continent had turned into a pile of ruins. However, this was still the Dan King continent, where the Dan sect was located. People could die, but there would always be some divine weapons, treasures, and pills left behind in certain places. Divine weapons and treasures were secondary. The Dan sect pills were extremely heaven-defying. The Ascendant Breakthrough Pill was the most ordinary of pills. Legend had it that the Dan sect could refine divine pills. Divine pills that only the experts of the mortal world could refine. Apart from that, there were even pills that could allow one to avoid divine tribulation lightning. There were also pills that could condense godhood, all sorts of heaven-defying pills. Ascendant Breakthrough Pill, Divine Tribulation Pill, Divine Tribulation Pill. Morong Yu's eyes flashed. These pills were all good stuff, especially the Divine Tribulation Pill and Divine Tribulation Pill. A Divine Tribulation Pill could allow one to avoid a bolt of tribulation lightning, but at the very least, one would be able to withstand it. If one could find a few dozen of these pills, would one be able to survive the tribulation unscathed? The Divine Tribulation Pill was even better. Unfortunately, it only allowed mortals to condense godhood and quickly ascend to godhood. Only those with godhood could be called gods. The difference between immortals and mortals was like heaven and earth. Godhood was a very special existence. It was where a god stored his strength, like an immortal's dantian. However, godhood was extremely sturdy and powerful. It existed in a god's heart. It was also because of the Godhead that the deity's deity heart possessed such immense power. This isn't a miracle. At most, it's an immortal miracle. Why is Jidu here? Morong Yu didn't understand. Many people had come to the Dan King continent this time. Even the quasi-god Jidu was here. Apart from them, the four great factions of the Immortal World Alliance were all here. The Heavenly Penance Palace head, the Demon Sect head, and the others were all here. All four of them were quasi-gods. Aside from them, there were also some super experts hidden in the world of immortals. Among them, there was no lack of quasi-god super experts. It's understandable that the Demon Sect head and the others are here. After all, there are Divine Tribulation Pills and Divine Tribulation Pills here. No matter how strong they are, they still need to pass the Divine Tribulation and condense godhood to become gods. However, Jidu is a fallen god. He doesn't need these pills, right? Could he be here to snatch these pills to nurture the super experts of the Divine Union? That's understandable. However, is that really it? Maybe Jidu has other reasons? Or maybe there's a secret in the Dan King continent that Jidu is interested in. Whether it's the Supremacy Pill, the God Tribulation Pill, or the Divine Tribulation Pill, I need to snatch them all. I don't need to snatch all of them. I just need one of each. Morong Yu was excited. He quickened his pace towards the depths of the Dan King continent. From Sun Haoshan and the others' information, Morong Yu knew that all sorts of heaven-defying medicinal pills were appearing in the Pilking continent. For example, there were medicinal pills with frightening recovery abilities or incomparably powerful healing medicinal pills. However, pills like the Supremacy Pill had never appeared. Or perhaps these pills had already been found by someone else and no one else had discovered them. I have to get these pills. Morong Yu's eyes shone brightly. His spiritual force spread out unscrupulously. covering a radius of hundreds of millions of miles. He scanned everything around him. That bastard dare to shoot at me? He's courting death. Murong Yu's spiritual force covered a large area. Within this area, there were many experts. When Murong Yu's spiritual force swept past them, these people felt it and started cursing. Some of them even followed Murong Yu's spiritual force and attacked Murong Yu, trying to kill him. After all, it was extremely rude and invasive to use spiritual force to scan others like Murong Yu did. However, other than the quasi-gods, Murong Yu wasn't afraid of anyone else. When these people tried to cause trouble for him, Murong Yu's terrifying aura exploded. It shook the heavens and the earth. These people immediately shut their mouths and didn't dare to cause trouble for Murong Yu. After all, Murong Yu didn't have time to play with these people. He needed to find the pills he needed. When Murong Yu's powerful aura exploded, no one dared to cause trouble for Murong Yu. Whoever had the biggest fist was right. Chapter 780. The Pill King continent was filled with the fragrance of pills. The entire continent was rich with immortal spiritual energy. This was because the Pill King continent was the home of the ancient pill sect. Therefore, every place could contain all sorts of heaven-defying pills from the pill sect. In fact, during the time that Murong Yu had been in the Pill King continent, quite a few pills had appeared in the Pill King continent, causing countless people to fight over them. This was because none of the pills from the ancient pill sect were trash. Even an ordinary immortal spiritual pill contained 100 times more immortal spiritual energy than the immortal spiritual pills of the immortal world. The immortal spiritual energy here is thicker than anywhere else. Could there be pills here? Murong Yu's spiritual will covered hundreds of millions of miles, searching every inch of space. Soon, he found a place where the immortal spiritual energy was especially rich. Thus, Murong Yu took a step forward and appeared in the place where the immortal spiritual energy was especially rich. Then, he stretched out his hand and reached deep into the earth. Rumble. The earth rumbled and cracked. Not long after, Murong Yu's hand reappeared. At the same time, an exquisite pill bottle appeared in his hand. The bottle was sealed, but it still emitted a rich pill fragrance. Waves of immortal spiritual energy also flowed out of the bottle. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat, and he opened the bottle. Instantly, an even richer pill fragrance and immortal spiritual energy flowed out. The bottle was filled with 100 sparkling and translucent pills. They emitted a faint glow. Immortal spiritual pills. So much spiritual energy. The immortal spiritual pills circulating in the immortal world are probably less than 1% of these pills. It's about the same as the pills made by the yin-yang cauldron. Unfortunately, it's useless to me. Murong Yu shook his head and put the bottle of pills into the Hichu Luoshu world. Was this the marrow cleansing pill? What a powerful force. Even the fleshly body of an immortal emperor expert can be tempered, cleansed, and refined. The effect is at least 10 times better than the so-called marrow cleansing pills of the immortal world. This is good stuff. Not long after obtaining a bottle of immortal pills, Murong Yu found another bottle of pills. Boom! Murong Yu's divine fists were invincible. With a single punch, he crushed a towering mountain into dust. At the same time, a bottle of pills appeared in Murong Yu's hands. Murong Yu opened the bottle, and a smile appeared on his face. Bloodthirsty pill. After swallowing it, one's strength would increase by 10 times or more for 2 hours. It was a heaven-defying pill that could increase one's strength in a short period of time. However, within 3 days after taking the pill, he would be extremely weak and would not be able to fight. It's suitable for use in a life and death situation. Murong Yu smiled as he stored the bottle of bloodthirsty pills into the He-Tu and Luo-Shu world. 9 transformations golden pill. Great recovery pill. Heaven reversal pill. As Murong Yu ventured deeper, he found more and more pills. Some of them were in a bottle, and some of them were in a single bottle. However, Morongyu did not care how many pills there were, because he had the Yin cauldron. Even if there was only one pill, he could mass-produce it. However, what made Morongyu depressed was that he kept finding more and more pills as he ventured deeper into the Pill King continent. But why didn't anyone else find them? Morongyu was sure that the area he was in had already been searched by many experts. But there were still so many pills left behind. Did they really not find them, or was Morongyu just too strong? At this time, many people had gathered around Morongyu. These people were all looking at Morongyu with greedy eyes. Morongyu's continuous discovery of pills had already made these people jealous. Ordinary pills might not be of much use to Morongyu. However, every pill here, even if it was just a pill that recovered immortal spiritual energy, was extremely important to others. In Morongyu did not only discover immortal spiritual pills. As he ventured deeper, he found more than 10 types of pills. Among them, pills like the bloodthirsty pill were even more coveted. With Morongyu's strength, he naturally knew that many experts had their eyes on him. However, Morongyu pretended not to notice. With his strength, if these people dared to make a move on him, Morongyu did not mind sending them back home. This kid is only a late-stage immortal lord, but he can always find pills. Big brother, let's just snatch them. Millions of miles away from Morongyu, there was a small team of 6 people. They were all looking at Morongyu with greedy eyes. One of them said viciously, his killing intent overflowing. I feel that this kid is not simple. If we act rashly, no matter how extraordinary he is, he's only a late-stage celestial duke. Do you think he's a match for us? Big brother, you're a celestial venerable, while the 5 of us are late-stage celestial emperors. Some of us are even titled celestial emperors. I don't believe that he can overturn the heavens. The 5th brother, who was the expert who spoke earlier, said fiercely. They were all envious of Morongyu's gains. I don't think it's necessary to kill him. He's able to find pills that are hidden in the depths of the forest. There must be something special about him. If we can control him, we'll be rich, the 6th brother said with bright eyes. Upon hearing this, everyone was taken aback. Then, they looked at the 6th brother happily and said, 6th brother, you're indeed a resourceful strategist. You're much stronger than me, the 5th brother said with a laugh. In that case, let's control him, the eldest brother said with a nod. At the same time, the 6 of them moved closer to Morongyu. At the same time, many people in the surroundings were trying to figure out a way to take down Morongyu. When they saw the group of 6 making their move, more and more people pounced on Morongyu. You're finally making your move? Morongyu sneered as he tossed a bottle of celestial spirit pills into the Hichu Luo Shu. It seems like I wasn't intimidated enough. In that case, I'll kill all of you to establish my dominance. Although Morongyu had been searching for pills, there was no news about the broken supremacy pill, the God tribulation pill, and the like. This made him feel slightly frustrated. However, Morongyu had a feeling that the broken supremacy pill was somewhere on the Elixir King continent. However, where was it? Morongyu had to look for it. Once Morongyu found the broken supremacy pill, it would definitely cause a bloodbath. Moreover, Morongyu didn't want to have so many people following him while he was searching. It was annoying. Since all of you want to die, I'll fulfill your wishes. Morongyu turned around and looked at the experts who were charging at him. If you don't want to die, get out of my sight. Get as far away as you can. Morongyu coldly snorted. His soft voice spread far and wide, drifting into the ears of countless people in the surroundings. Ah, kid, you're just a late-stage immortal duke. How dare you be so arrogant? We'll give you a choice now. Submit to us and become our slave. The 5th brother of the group of 6 laughed heartily. Hearing this, everyone's heart skipped a beat. Enslave him? That's a great idea. In their opinion, Morongyu wasn't strong, but his ability to find pills was too strong. If they could enslave him, suddenly, all of their eyes lit up as they launched their strongest attacks at Morongyu. They were afraid that Morongyu would be enslaved by others first. These people are really eager to die. Morongyu's eyes flashed coldly. Since that's the case, all of you can go to hell. Boom! As he spoke, Morongyu threw out a punch at the group of 6. The wind from the punch raged and enveloped the entire group of 6. It was filled with killing intent. You're just a late-stage immortal duke. You want to kill all of us? The 5th brother of the 6-man team sneered. He took a few steps forward, flew over, and similarly sent a punch towards Murong Yu's divine fist. At the same time, he stretched out his other hand and grabbed at Murong Yu, who was hundreds of thousands of miles away. You're courting death. Seeing that the 5th brother had made his move, the others shouted angrily and attacked at the same time, grabbing at Murong Yu. Pooh! However, just as they were about to attack, Murong Yu's punch had already landed. Instantly, countless people saw that the 5th brother didn't even have time to scream before he was killed by a single punch. He killed a late-stage immortal emperor with a single punch. Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but be shocked. However, they weren't afraid, because most of them were immortal supremacies. Murong Yu could kill immortal emperors, but could he kill immortal supremacies? The gap between immortal supremacies and immortal emperors was huge. You killed the 5th brother? When a group of 6 saw that Murong Yu had killed the 5th brother with a single punch, they couldn't help but be enraged. They all attacked at the same time, grabbing at Murong Yu. They were angry that the 5th brother was killed, but they were more concerned about the rewards of the Elixir King continent. Therefore, they didn't want to kill Murong Yu. They only wanted to control Murong Yu. Not only him, but all of you will die today. Now, let's start with you. Murong Yu's cold voice resounded. At the same time, his fist trembled violently as it came crashing down. At this moment, the remaining members of the 6-man team felt a sense of impending doom. Run! Without hesitation, the 5 of them turned around and fled. However, it was already too late. Murong Yu's divine punch had already landed on them. Asterisk Kong. Asterisk after a loud explosion. The 5 of them were turned into powder by Murong Yu's punch. They couldn't be more dead. What a powerful force! Seeing this scene, the people nearby couldn't help but gasp. However, their attacks didn't stop. Murong Yu sneered and took a step forward, appearing in front of an early immortal venerable, and punched his chest. A powerful force gushed out. The early immortal venerable let out a wail and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Chapter 781. Swoosh! Murong Yu stepped into the air and charged into the crowd. Every step he took caused the space around him to shatter. The experts by Murong Yu's side didn't even have the chance to escape as the void continued to shatter. Murong Yu's strength was violent as he started his massacre. Like a wolf in a flock of sheep, no one was able to withstand a single blow from him. Whether it was immortal emperors or immortal primes, none of them could withstand a single blow from him and were turned into dust. Even when Murong Yu punched out or stepped out, a large number of immortals would fall. Fresh blood splattered as the number of stars increased continuously. Murong Yu's expression was cold, as if he was an ancient god of death. His killing was earth-shattering and shocking. Retreat, retreat, retreat quickly. He is not an immortal monarch at all. He can even kill immortal primes. We have been fooled. Retreat quickly. In a few breaths' time, hundreds of experts had died in Murong Yu's hands. Most of them were immortal primes. When Murong Yu killed so many experts effortlessly, those who wanted to control or seize Murong Yu's elixirs finally reacted. One by one, they retreated in all directions with a look of horror on their faces. None of you can escape. Murong Yu was floating in the void and sneered. Space imprisonment. Suddenly, the space within a radius of a few 100 million miles began to condense. One by one, the figures of the experts were frozen in the void, unable to move. Murong Yu's space rules could not deal with quasi-god experts. However, these experts were only in the early stage of immortal primes. They were no match for Murong Yu and were immediately imprisoned by Murong Yu. Space slash, space storm, space oscillation, space laceration. After imprisoning the space, Murong Yu shouted again, following which streaks of spatial energy formed all sorts of divine weapons that slashed towards the experts who were imprisoned. Either space was directly torn apart, or space was rapidly vibrating. Rumble, Bolts of blood-red lightning kept exploding in the sky above the land. Blood clouds, blood rain, red to the point of purplish, red to the point of blackness. This was because a large number of immortal venerables had fallen. Murong Yu went on a killing spree, instantly killing hundreds of immortal venerables. What a terrifying change! How many immortal venerables have fallen? The anomaly didn't cover the entire Pellet King continent, but the anomaly and its terrifying aura were visible to everyone on the continent. Instantly, countless people were shocked. They were all guessing who it was that started the massacre. A few hundred mortal venerables wasn't a lot compared to the immortal venerables of the immortal world, but it wasn't a small number either. However, this was the first time such a large-scale death had occurred. Countless people quickly rushed over, but what they saw was a scene of devastation and blood all over the ground. Murong Yu? He's Murong Yu? Murong Yu is no longer in this area. He had already left after killing these people. However, although he had killed hundreds of immortal venerables, there were still people who had witnessed the scene from afar. At the same time, Sun Haoshan and the others were also spreading the news that Murong Yu was the one who had killed them. It's actually Murong Yu? He actually appeared? And he's so powerful? He killed immortal venerables like killing dogs? They were all stunned when they found out that it was Murong Yu who had killed them. This was especially so for the people from the Immortal Realm Alliance and the Divine Union. They were in imminent danger and felt an extreme sense of danger. This was because they all knew that Murong Yu and the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance were enemies. They wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. Now that Murong Yu had appeared in the Pellet King continent with such terrifying strength, they would definitely die if they encountered him. There was no doubt that they would die if they met him. In an instant, the people from the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance were in a state of panic. Whoosh! A young man appeared in this area. He had a malicious expression and a sinister look in his eyes. He's Murong Yu? He's Murong Yu who owns the legendary Hichu Luoshu world. No wonder he could escape from my pursuit. However, you'll definitely die in the Pellet King continent. The young man's expression was cold as he exuded a cold, murderous aura, causing the surrounding temperature to drop a little. If Murong Yu was here, he would definitely feel a familiar aura from the young man. This was because this person was none other than the giant snake who had chased him for half a day and almost killed him. He had taken human form and had also come to the Pellet King continent. Or rather, he had chased him all the way to the continent. Whoosh! After the young man with the giant snake appeared, another young man appeared in this area. However, the void around this young man's body was constantly changing, making it impossible to see his appearance clearly. Murong Yu, you finally appeared. Hichu Luoshu, I must have it. The young man sneered in his heart. If Murong Yu was here, he would definitely recognize who this person was. It was the owner of the Divine Tomb, the fallen god and the leader of the Divine Union, GMO Quasi-God. After GMO appeared, he noticed the giant snake's human form. Suddenly, his eyes shot out a shocking divine light as he looked at the giant snake. Feeling the terrifying, murderous aura from GMO, the giant snake couldn't help but look over. Then its body shook violently. A powerful battle intent also surged into the sky. Whoosh! 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 Not long after, a few more figures appeared near the two quasi-gods. They all looked at G and the giant snake with indifferent expressions. For quasi-god level beings. As soon as these four people appeared, they surrounded GMO in the center. Their divine consciousness also vaguely locked onto GMO, Palace Master of the Immortal Palace, Palace Master of the Heavenly Punisher Palace, Sacred Leader of the Sacred Sect, Sect Leader of the Devil Sect. G smiled. His eyes gradually swept across the faces of the people who had arrived, but he remained calm and collected. It was as if he wasn't afraid of the four people at all. The leaders of the four major forces of the Immortal Realm Alliance were all quasi-gods. GMO, you dare to appear in the Elixir King continent. The Devil Sect Master looked at GMO and said indifferently. Although his tone was calm, it contained a shocking, murderous aura. If they could kill GMO today, the Divine Union would be vulnerable, and the Immortal Realm Alliance would unify the Immortal Realm. Don't talk about the Great Continent. I can even come and go freely if I want to build a city. Don't tell me you want to fight here. GMO looked calm and at ease, as if he had nothing to fear. The Palace Master of the Immortal Palace and the other three frowned slightly. To be honest, they were a little afraid of GMO's strength. None of them were a match for GMO alone. If they joined forces, they might be able to kill GMO. However, when they saw GMO's expression, they hesitated. Moreover, if they really killed GMO here, some of them would be seriously injured by GMO's counterattack. At that time, they would be in extreme danger. The four of them weren't as good as they seemed. If one of them was seriously injured, the other three would definitely add insult to injury and kill him as well. Therefore, they were contemplating whether or not to make a move. If you're not afraid of destroying the Elixir King continent, then go ahead and try. I'll accompany you to the end. However, if you destroy something on the Elixir King continent, GMO sneered. The Palace Master of the Immortal Palace and the other three's hearts sank. There was a reason for them to appear on the Elixir King continent. There were treasures on the Elixir King continent that they desperately wanted. If it was really as G said and those treasures were destroyed, then their trip here would be in vain. You want to become gods, and I want to return to the Immortal Realm. How about we live in peace for the time being? When the treasures appear, we'll fight for them with our strength. What do you think? GMO said indifferently. The four Holy Gates Holy Masters exchanged a glance and nodded their heads slightly. Killing GMO and dominating the Immortal Realm was a display of their ambition. However, becoming gods was even more tempting to them. Although they were quasi-gods, their lifespans were limited. If they couldn't become gods, even if they became the overlords of the Immortal Realm, there would be a day when their lifespans would run out and they would die. Treasures to become gods? Treasures to become gods? The giant snake was excited. Originally, he wasn't the least bit interested in this so-called miracle. He had only come here to kill Murongyu. Now, he was also interested, and he was very interested. Whoosh! Just as the giant snake was about to explode with excitement, 5 eyes filled with killing intent looked over. Shit! The giant snake roared in his heart. With a flicker of his body, he used his fastest speed and tore through the air. Boom! The moment he flew, GMO and the other sacred masters attacked at the same time. With 5 quasi-gods attacking a quasi-god expert like the giant snake would definitely be killed. Pooh! Although the giant snake's reaction was a little faster, he still couldn't avoid the attacks. Immediately, 5 terrifying forces bombarded him. The violent force almost caused his body to collapse, and he spat out mouthfuls of blood. The giant snake was horrified. With a roar, he increased his strength again and flew into the distance. He didn't have any intention of resisting. Where do you think you're going? GMO shouted coldly. He stretched out his hand and attacked the giant snake again. At the same time, the 4 sacred masters attacked again. The terrifying power strangled the giant snake's soul and made it tremble. Why are you attacking me? The giant snake roared. He knew he couldn't escape, so he increased his strength to the limit and turned around to attack with 2 palms. However, how could he be the joint attack of the 5 sacred masters? He was already the weakest among them. Now that the 5 of them had joined forces, he was even less of a match. Boom! The giant snake let out a blood-curdling screech. Its entire body was ruptured by the impact. Its internal organs were shattered, and blood was spurting out wildly. You're too ugly, GMO said lightly. He took a step forward and punched out again. You'll all die a horrible death. I'll remember today's enmity. I'll pay you back 1 billion times in the future. You'll all die. The giant snake roared. Suddenly, a dazzling golden light erupted from his body. Chapter 782. Bang! The golden light emitted from the giant snake's body rapidly expanded and firmly wrapped around the giant snake. The golden light was as dazzling as the sun in the sky. At the same time, An extremely powerful aura violently erupted at this moment. Even quasi-gods like G were dazzled for a moment and couldn't see the giant snake's movements clearly. Not good. The 5 quasi-gods, including G and the immortal palace masters, suddenly roared and then exploded with their most powerful attacks, ferociously bombarding the giant snake. However, at this moment, the giant snake, carrying the ball of golden light on its body, violently smashed through the void and disappeared in front of them. Where do you think you're going? Ji Hao and the others roared in their hearts. The huge hand that contained a terrifying attack also smashed through the void and attacked the huge snake that was escaping quickly in the void. They wanted to kill the huge snake in the void. Rumble, the giant snake's speed was extremely fast. Although it had smashed into the void first, it was still injured. After all, it was still a little slow because it had been injured before. However, G and the others were determined to kill it. Therefore, not long after it had entered the void and fled far away, G's attack suddenly bombarded its body. To be precise, it bombarded the ball of golden light. Tremendous power vibrated, bombarding the ball of golden light violently and causing it to tremble violently. Puff! The giant snake in the golden light couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. However, the ball of golden light didn't shatter, which made G snort in displeasure. Just as G was about to continue attacking, the power of the 4 quasi-gods also bombarded the ball of golden light. Crack! Finally, under the attack of the 4 quasi-gods, the golden light on the giant snake's body finally shattered completely. Fragments of the golden light also shot out from his body. It turned out that this golden light was actually a terrifyingly powerful battle armor. The giant snake spat out blood again, and its aura weakened a little. However, it was indeed difficult to kill a quasi-god expert. Under the bombardment of the 5 quasi-gods, the giant snake was seriously injured but not killed. With a whoosh, the giant snake borrowed the power of the 4 quasi-gods' bombardment and disappeared in front of G and the others again. This time, G and the others didn't pursue. This was because they knew that they had no chance to kill the giant snake. Quasi-god level powerhouses were not so easily killed. Even when the 5 epics joined forces, they were unable to kill the giant snake. In the end, it even managed to escape. Ji withdrew his hand and looked at the Devil sect leader and the others. Then, he disappeared in a flash. Not long after, the Devil sect leader and the others also dispersed. They did not kill each other for a certain purpose. As for why he killed G, because G was just a demonic beast in disguise, he was not familiar with the power of both sides. They would never allow other experts to participate in the fight for treasures. Moreover, Ji Hao and the others had thought that they could kill the giant snake with their strength. However, he didn't expect that the giant snake's life-saving ability was so strong that it actually managed to escape. However, Ji Yanshu and the others did not think much of it. After all, even if the giant snake managed to escape, it would have been severely injured by them. It was impossible for him to recover in a short period of time. For the time being, the giant snake was no longer a threat to them. Moreover, by the time the giant serpent regained its strength, one of them would have already unified the immortal realm. At that time, no matter how strong the giant snake was, it would not be a match for them. Vicious and merciless indeed, Murong Yu of the Hichu Luoshu world suddenly sneered. From beginning to end, he had not left this area. Instead, he had entered the Hichu Luoshu world and hid in the void. He had seen everything clearly. Even the quasi-god level powerhouses did not realize that Murong Yu had been here all along. The treasure on the giant snake just now should be a quasi-god level divine weapon. Unfortunately, it was shattered just like that. If it wasn't for the protection of that armor, the giant snake would have been killed long ago, right? However, even so, the giant snake has probably been severely injured. It probably doesn't have much of its strength at its peak. It had so much fun chasing me before. Now it should be my turn to beat a drowning dog. Murong Yu sneered in his heart, his body bursting with murderous intent. From a moment he saw the giant snake injured, Muron Yu had an incomparably crazy idea in his mind. Kill the giant snake, or directly control it. This was a quasi-god-level powerhouse. A true overlord-level existence in the immortal realm. If he could control the giant snake, Muron Yu's strength would skyrocket. Thinking about it, Muron Yu felt incomparably excited. Immediately, he stepped out of the Hichu Luoshu world and chased in the direction the giant snake escaped. The giant snake directly tore through the void to escape. Even Ji and the others could not continue to chase it. How could Muron Yu chase it? Muron Yu could indeed chase it, because he cultivated the Zai technique, which was the space rule. Everyone had their own unique aura, just like their soul, which would never be the same as others. Ordinary powerhouses could rely on the aura left in the space to chase and kill. However, if some auras were too weak, then it would be impossible to chase and kill. Take the giant snake, for example. The aura he left in the void was so weak that even Ji could not sense it. However, for Muron Yu, there was no problem of not being able to track it, because in front of him, an incomparably huge white line appeared in the void, stretching endlessly into the distant sky. This incomparably huge white line was the aura left in the void by the giant snake. In addition, the surrounding void was densely packed with white lines of different sizes and shapes. These were the auras left by everyone who had passed by nearby. As long as one passed by this void, no matter how powerful one's concealment technique was, one would leave an aura in the void. Of course, ordinary people could not see it, but Muron Yu, who had mastered the space rule, could see at a glance. As long as Muron Yu chased after this aura, he would not be able to escape from him no matter where he went, unless he was not in this world. Of course, if Muron Yu discovered his aura in another space, Muron Yu could continue to chase and kill him. Zai technique. Muron Yu roared in his heart. In an instant, the densely packed white lines in front of him disappeared, leaving behind only the snake's white line. It was extremely eye-catching as it hung horizontally between the sky and earth. Muron Yu took a step forward, using his fastest speed to chase after it. Hundreds of millions of miles away from the Elixir King continent, in the depths of the East Sea. Rip, all of a sudden, a huge crack appeared in the firmament above the 9 heavens. Then, a figure emerged from the crack in the void. It was a young man bathed in blood. His aura was chaotic and weak. Just as he walked out of the crack, he staggered as if he could not stand properly and almost fell from the sky. Divine Union, Immortal Realm Alliance. All of you must die. All of you must die. I, Phone, will kill every single one of you. Phone roared. His boundless hatred was earth-shattering, connecting heaven and earth. Even the surrounding void and the deep sea were trembling violently. Phone was the giant snake, the one that was almost killed by Ji Hao and the others. My injuries are too severe. I will not be able to recover without at least 1,000,000 years. These bastards are too cruel. Phone was furious after checking his injuries. He clenched his teeth and gritted his teeth. Let's find a place to cultivate first. When I recover my strength, all of you will die. Phone roared and flew forward. This place was too close to the Elixir King continent. He had to leave this place and find an absolutely safe place. Although he knew that no one could chase after him, he was still cautious. As the saying goes, it is better to be safe than sorry. He continued to go deeper into the East Sea. After a long time, Phone finally found a small continent the size of a continent in the immortal realm and landed. This should be safe. It is far enough from the Elixir King continent. My body can't take it anymore. Let's heal first. Phone thought to himself. He went deep into the ground and opened up a cave abode. After setting up hundreds of millions of restrictions, he began to heal. Not long after Phone began to heal, a stream of light shot from the Elixir King continent and stopped on this small continent. The giant snake is down there. Muron Yu couldn't help but sneer as he looked at the huge white line that pierced deep into the continent's underground. If it was an ordinary person, even a quasi-god expert, they would not be able to sense Ao Feng's presence. However, in Murong Yu's eyes, no matter how well Ao Feng hid, there was nowhere to hide. The giant snake must be severely injured. Otherwise, it would not have started to heal so quickly. Now is the time to beat the dog when it is down. However, it is better to be safe than sorry. Murong Yu thought to himself. He moved and entered the Hichu Luoshu world. Then, he controlled the Hichu Luoshu to go deep into the small continent. So many restrictions. If it were an ordinary quasi-god, it would be difficult to enter without alerting the giant snake. But as far as I'm concerned, restrictions and whatnot are nothing. Murong Yu inwardly sneered as he looked at the dense array of restrictions. What he was least afraid of now were restrictions and formations. Moreover, Ao Feng's restrictions were too weak. After all, he was only a monster. His understanding of restrictions was very shallow. These shallow restrictions were nothing in front of Murong Yu, who had mastered the rules of space. Murong Yu controlled the Heat 2 and the inscription of the Luo as he shuttled through space. It was as if he had entered an uninhabited area, so none of the restrictions noticed him. Whoosh! After passing through hundreds of millions of restrictions, Murong Yu appeared in Ao Feng's cave abode. He looked coldly at the recuperating Ao Feng. Chapter 783. The giant snake is severely injured. He shouldn't be able to exert 70% of his full strength. Although Murong Yu had appeared in Ao Feng's abode, he didn't leave Hichu Luoshu, nor did he attack immediately. He needed to observe the situation first. After observing for a while, he found that Ao Feng didn't have any tricks up his sleeve and was severely injured. The giant snake was a super expert of the quasi-god realm. Although he wasn't as strong as Ji Hao and the others, he was still a quasi-god after all, a terrifying existence with a strength of 5 million earth dragons. Even if he could only exert 70% of his strength, he could still exert the terrifying strength of 3 million earth dragons. Most importantly, as a quasi-god, it was hard to guarantee that he didn't have any life-saving techniques. Qiong Tian, use your strongest attack and try to take down the giant snake. But don't kill him. Murong Yu decided to attack, but not alone. He was going to attack with Qiong Tian. Qiong Tian was one of the old ancestors of Heavenly Penalty Palace, a late immortal venerable expert. Although he was just an ordinary late immortal venerable, his strength shouldn't be underestimated. And why do I feel uneasy? Ao Feng, who was in the midst of cultivation, suddenly felt uneasy and couldn't get into the right state. Could it be that Ji Hao and the others have caught up with us? But that's impossible. They would never chase after us. But why do I feel a sense of danger? Ao Feng opened his eyes abruptly and looked upwards, as if he wanted to look through the boundless land and see the sky. In his eyes, the hundreds of millions of seals that he had set up were still intact. There was no sign of anyone breaking in, but the feeling of uneasiness in his heart was getting stronger. What's going on? Ao Feng was shocked and secretly circulated his strength. Asterisk Hong Long. Asterisk at this moment, Ao Feng clearly saw the void above him explode. A fist shot up to the sky, carrying a terrifying aura that could destroy the world. It broke through the void and blasted towards Ao Feng. Ao Feng was taken aback. He was really frightened, because the hundreds of millions of seals that he had set up had never been broken before. But now, someone had launched a sneak attack on him in the abode he had created. I don't care who you are. Go to hell. After the initial shock, Ao Feng was enraged. His murderous aura filled the entire cavern. At the same time, he let out a roar and soared into the sky. Both of his fists punched towards Murong Yu, who had just stepped out of the void. Rumble. The fists of both sides collided fiercely, and a huge and terrifying power erupted. After an earth-shaking rumble, Murong Yu and the giant snake both shook. A tremendous force slammed into them, immediately sending them flying. Rumble. Both of their bodies were extremely terrifying. The power contained within them could even shatter the void. As for the restrictions set up by the giant snake, they couldn't even withstand a single blow and were constantly smashed apart. The shocking power that erupted from the collision between the two of them directly shattered the incomparably huge cave dwelling. Kill! Muronyu stepped in the air, shattering large swaths of space with every step he took. At last, he gave a raging roar and transformed into a beam of light, darting towards Ao Foam. Boy, it's you. I've been searching high and low for you, and you've actually delivered yourself to me. Die. Seeing that it was Muronyu who had launched a sneak attack on him, Ao Foam was stunned at first. Then he sneered. Immediately, he stomped on the void for hundreds of millions of miles and pounced over. Rumble, rumble, rumble. The two of them began to fight again. However, this time, the battle was different from the last one. Last time, it couldn't even be called a battle. It was a one-sided battle, and Muronyu was constantly being killed. Now, Ao Feng's strength had dropped sharply after being severely injured. It had dropped to the level of 3 million dragon power. Although he was still stronger than Muronyu, he couldn't continue to kill Muronyu. Haha, little worm, you're seriously injured. I'd like to see how long you can last. After a while, Muronyu burst into laughter. Ao Foam was severely injured. He could only use 70% of his strength at his peak. Furthermore, his body and meridians had been bombarded into smithereens. During his battle with Muronyu discovered that his injuries were getting worse and worse. If they continued to fight, Muronyu wouldn't even need to risk his life. Ao Feng's injuries would get worse and worse, and he would be no match for Muronyu. Ao Feng naturally understood this. If I continue to fight, I'm afraid I'll be killed by him. Ao Feng was furious because of Murongyu's shamelessness. If I die in the hands of an immortal master, I won't be satisfied even if I die. No, I must escape from here. Ao Feng roared in his heart. He wanted to kill Muronyu, but there was nothing he could do now. However, he didn't want to escape. Being forced to escape by an immortal master? If news of this spread, he wouldn't be able to survive in this world. Bastard! Let's just kill him. Ao Feng's heart was filled with hatred as he stared at Muronyu viciously. Muronyu couldn't help but shiver. Is this guy planning to do something? Muronyu struck out with his palm. The huge palm covered the sky and the earth, covering the entire sky as it pressed down fiercely. Even if I'm severely injured, I'll still kill you. Ao Feng's extremely cold voice rang out. At the same time, he struck out with his fist, shattering Murongyu's huge palm into dust. At the same time, he took a step forward and crushed a large part of the void. He clenched his fist and pushed it out fiercely. Asterisk, rumble, asterisk, a terrifying force burst out. Two huge fists, containing a terrifying impact force, swept across billions of space-time and appeared in front of Muronyu, ruthlessly smashing down. Let's see how long you can last. Muronyu snorted coldly. He also took a step forward, gathered all his strength on his fists, and punched out fiercely. Asterisk boom. Asterisk, a powerful force surged and bombarded Murongyu's body. The terrifying force burst out, and a series of cracking sounds came from Murongyu's body. Both his hands were shattered, and his chest caved in from the huge force. The violent force rushed into Murongyu's body, crazily tearing and strangling everything. Asterisk puff. Asterisk spitting out a mouthful of blood. Muronyu was blasted hundreds of millions of miles away. On the other hand, Ao Feng didn't have it easy either. He was also blasted hundreds of millions of miles away. However, his body was even stronger than Murongyu's. Only his hands were broken. After all, the giant snake was a demon beast that lived in the East Sea. If his body wasn't strong enough, he would have been torn apart by the waves of the East Sea. How could he become a quasi-god? What a powerful force. But if this is all you've got, you will die today. Muronyu stood in the void, bathed in blood. His hair was messy, and his clothes were torn. But his voice was extremely cold. At the same time, the violent force of life began to rush through his body, repairing everything. His collapsed chest quickly recovered, and his shattered hands grew back as well. Not long after, Muronyu's body was completely restored, and he reached his peak state. Seeing Muronyu's terrifying recovery ability, Aofeng couldn't help but gasp. This kid must have a powerful treasure that can repair his body. If I can take it, my injuries can be healed in a short time. The quasi-gods of the era and the Immortal Realm Alliance will all be no match for me. They will all die. Aofeng roared in his heart, then suddenly roared. The next moment, a giant snake like an ancient divine mountain appeared in front of Muronyu. A vast aura burst out, shooting into the sky and sweeping in all directions. What's going on? Muronyu looked surprised, because when Aofeng transformed into his true body, Muronyu clearly felt that his strength had become stronger. At least 4 million dragon power. Muronyu was secretly shocked because the power that Aofeng revealed now made him feel threatened. He knew that Aofeng in this state could even kill him. Rumble. While Muronyu was thinking, Aofeng's giant snake tail had already shattered the sky, and it whipped fiercely at Muronyu. Muronyu sneered as he took a few steps forward and threw a punch at the snake's tail. Puff! However, 4 million dragon power was far beyond Muronyu's limit. Due to the collision, Muronyu was sent flying. The powerful force shattered every bone in his body, and he was on the brink of death. At the same time, Aofeng opened his mouth and spat out a cloud of black mist. Sizzle, wherever the black mist passed, even the void was corroded. A strong stench came to Muronyu's nose, and he even felt dizzy. He knew that the poisonous mist not only had the power to corrode, but it was also highly poisonous. It was a poison that could easily kill a venerable immortal. Muronyu regretted. He regretted that he didn't let Xiong Tian attack at the same time. He regretted that he didn't kill Aofeng directly and used the Bow of Cosmos and the sky-shaking arrow to kill him. However, it wasn't too late now. Xiong Tian, come out. Muronyu roared and directly let Xiong Tian out. If he was alone, even if he wouldn't be killed by Aofeng, he wouldn't be able to subdue Aofeng. Aofeng was a quasi-god, and this was a great opportunity. Muronyu definitely wouldn't give up on this opportunity. He had to control Aofeng. Moreover, this was his only chance. If he missed it, he would have to face Aofeng's relentless pursuit in the future, and he wouldn't be able to control a quasi-god expert. 8 heavenly strikes. As soon as Xiong Tian came out, he immediately used his strongest attack, a killing move, and ruthlessly attacked Aofeng. At the same time, the life force in Muronyu's body rushed out crazily, repairing Muronyu's body. Bow of Cosmos, sky-shaking arrow. If I don't kill you today, I'll change my surname to yours. Muronyu was ruthless. He grabbed the air, and the Bow of Cosmos and sky-shaking arrow were pulled out from the Hichu Luoshu world. Then, he drew the bow and shot an arrow. Chapter 784. Asterisk Bang. Asterisk Xiong Tian, who appeared out of nowhere, unleashed a peerless attack, breaking through the void and striking towards Aofeng. Aofeng sneered when he sensed Xiong Tian's violent attack. His huge snake tail lashed out, and the huge force shattered the void. His tail and Xiong Tian's tail collided fiercely. After an earth-shattering explosion, Xiong Tian spurted out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying. Aofeng sneered. His giant snake tail smashed the sky and chased after Xiong Tian, intending to kill him. Xiong Tian couldn't even withstand a single blow. Although he was a late, immortal venerable, the gap between him and Muronyu had widened. The gap between him and Aofeng in his true form was even greater. The gap of 1 million Earth Dragon Force was enough to crush Aofeng. However, just as Aofeng was about to chase after Xiong Tian and kill him, an aura that made his heart palpitate appeared out of nowhere. In a flash, Aofeng stopped chasing after Xiong Tian and opened his eyes. A ray of golden light shot out from the void, containing an aura that made Aofeng's heart palpitate. Divine Arrow. Again? As soon as Aofeng saw the golden light, He knew it was the sky-shaking arrow that was shooting toward him. However, what made him depressed was that the power of the heaven-shaking arrow this time was much stronger than the first time, because the chi of danger in Ao Feng's heart was much stronger than before. This was because he was severely injured. However, it was just one heaven-shaking arrow. Ao Feng sneered. His giant snake tail burst out with a towering divine light, rolling and lashing towards the heaven-shaking arrow. Let's see how strong your strength is. Morongyu sneered. He drew the bow twice, shooting the remaining 2 heaven-shaking arrows towards the giant snake's tail. At the same time, Morongyu kept his bow of universe and roared, "Universe Yin-Yang Cauldron, Yin-Yang Fire, burn everything." Amidst the roar, the Yin-Yang Cauldron exploded with Yin-Yang Fire, bombarding the giant snake's tail. Xiong Tian's face was filled with fear when he saw the universe cauldron. He had experienced the terror of the Yin-Yang Fire before. He knew that even though the giant snake had reached the quasi-god realm, if it was burned by the Yin-Yang Fire, it would lose a layer of skin even if it didn't die. Boundless Ocean. Ao Feng roared and unleashed his ultimate attack once again. The water in the East Sea surged and bombarded towards the heaven-shaking arrow, Morongyu and the others. Spatial imprisonment, spatial tremor, spatial tear, spatial storm. Morongyu of space of the universe shouted of space's rule of space. However, this still wasn't enough. With a thought, a medicinal pill glowing with blood-red light appeared in Morongyu's hand, and he threw it into his mouth. Bloodthirsty pill. Bloodthirsty pill. After swallowing it, one's strength and vitality would increase tenfold for 2 hours, but after 3 days, one would be extremely weak and unable to get out of bed. In other words, after Morongyu swallowed the bloodthirst pill, he had to end the battle within 2 hours. Otherwise, he would become extremely weak and powerless, and even an ordinary celestial immortal would be able to kill him. Rumble. The bloodthirst pill melted as soon as it entered Morongyu's mouth, like a warm current rushing into his body. Violent energy drilled into Morongyu's meridians, quickly replenishing Morongyu's strength. At that moment, Morongyu felt his strength begin to skyrocket. In the blink of an eye, his strength had increased to 10 times its previous level. However, the power of the bloodthirst pill was too violent. Although it increased Morongyu's strength, it continued to wreak havoc in Morongyu's body, strangling Morongyu's meridians. In fact, Morongyu could even see that his meridians were constantly being damaged. Although the bloodthirst pill can temporarily increase my strength, it does too much damage to my body. Unless I have no other choice, I can't use it. With a thought, life force began to wash over his body, repairing the damage to his body. To Morongyu, the damage caused by the bloodthirst pill was negligible. What a powerful force! Is this the power of a quasi-god? Feeling the power surging in his body like stormy waves, Morongyu couldn't help but clench his hands. This power was so strong that Morongyu enjoyed it very much. However, although the bloodthirst pill is said to increase my strength by 10 times, it is impossible. However, this is enough. Morongyu muttered in his heart. The bloodthirst pill could increase one's strength and blood for an hour. According to this calculation, Morongyu's strength should be able to reach more than 20 million dragon power. However, Morongyu's strength could only be raised to the level of a quasi-god. After all, no matter how heaven-defying the bloodthirst pill was, he still needed a carrier to increase his strength by 10 times. And this carrier was Morongyu's body. Right now, Morongyu's body could only withstand the power of a quasi-god. Of course, if Morongyu only had a few 100,000 points of heavenly dragon strength, he would be able to increase his strength by 10 times. Rumble. While Morongyu was learning the bloodthirst pill, Ao Feng also showed his power, blasting away the sky-quaking arrow and the others. He avoided the attack of the Yin-Yang Cauldron. Giant snake, surrender. Surrender to me. Morongyu floated in the void, looking at the giant snake in front of him, and said calmly, "Die." Ao Feng only replied with this one word. The giant snake tail lashed out fiercely, trying to kill Murongyu. What a joke. Asking a quasi-god to surrender to an immortal? This was impossible. He would rather die than surrender. Of course, whether he would really rather die than surrender was unknown. If that's the case, then I'll beat you until you surrender. Murongyu sneered. He took a step forward, crushing millions of voids. He appeared directly on the giant snake's tail and punched out fiercely. Rumble. After an earth-shattering punch, the giant snake's tail was blasted away by Murongyu's punch. It was bloody and almost shattered by Murongyu. However, Murongyu's body only shook a little. What an amazing defense. Murongyu's fist was numb from the shock. After being punched with all his strength, the giant snake's tail didn't turn into a bloody mist as he expected. Instead, it only had a huge bloody hole and was blasted away. Murongyu, I'm going to kill you. A sharp pain came, almost making Ao Feng faint. When he saw that the snake's tail he was so proud was almost destroyed, he screamed crazily. He exploded with power and attacked Murongyu. I'm going to beat you until you surrender. Murongyu laughed. The feeling of power in his hands made him very happy. Fury of the mountains and rivers. Murongyu took a step forward. Terrifying power burst out from his feet and attacked the giant snake. At the same time, Murongyu took a step forward and rushed directly to Ao Feng's head. His divine fist was invincible as it blasted out violently. Two big hands reached out from Ao Feng's stomach. They gathered incredible power and clashed with Murongyu. Kill! Murongyu shouted excitedly. His hands turned into millions of claw shadows and attacked Ao Feng's head. Bang! Ao Feng's hands were shattered, and he was blasted away. 10,000 gene strength, elephant step. Murongyu took a step forward and stomped on Ao Feng's mountain-sized body, shattering the void with a single step. Puff! Even though Ao Feng's body had great defensive power, Murongyu's stomp still left a huge bloody hole in his body. Ao Feng let out a shrill scream as he retreated again. Aren't you very strong? Aren't you very arrogant? Weren't you very happy when you were chasing me? Didn't you want to kill me? Murongyu growled as he unleashed one big move after another, forcing Ao Feng to retreat miserably, one step at a time. Kid, you're just taking advantage of my weakness. If I was at my peak. Bang! Ao Feng roared furiously. But before he could react, Murongyu had already rushed in front of him and ruthlessly punched him in the mouth, forcing him to swallow the rest of his words back into his stomach. What was the meaning of beating a drowning dog? It was now. Great Vajra Chakra Seal, Lion Seal, Elephant Drawing Fist. At this moment, Ao Feng was safely treated as a punching bag by Murongyu. A powerful punching bag. Murongyu blasted out almost all of his combat skills, causing Ao Feng's scales to splatter everywhere. His body was covered in ghastly wounds that made his hair stand on end. Ao Feng felt that he was in a miserable situation. His hatred for Murongyu was even sharper. If he wasn't injured first, how could Murongyu be so presumptuous? However, beating a drowning dog was also a kind of strength. This guy is too hard to kill. Murongyu had already used all of his combat skills, but Ao Feng was still as energetic as ever. Murongyu couldn't help but feel shocked. I don't believe that I can't kill you. God's Descent. Murongyu made up his mind and used God's Descent again. When the golden god shadow appeared in the void, Ao Feng's mind was instantly sealed. As for Murongyu, he took advantage of this opportunity and unleashed an invincible divine fist. In an instant, he threw out millions of punches. Ao Feng's body was almost shattered. Still not dead? Murongyu was furious. He crazily raised his strength and shouted, "Immortal Slashing Sword." Holding the immortal slashing sword with both hands, Murongyu descended from the sky. The immortal slashing sword emitted a sword light that shot up to the sky. It carried a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth. It slashed down at Ao Feng. The power of the immortal slashing sword was so terrifying that it made Ao Feng feel like he was about to die. Ao Feng's expression changed. At this moment, he was terrified. He knew that if he was hit by this sword, he would be cut in half no matter how strong his body was. This was because his body had suffered an unprecedented injury. His whole body was almost destroyed. Wait, I'm willing to surrender. Ao Feng's heart trembled. He didn't want to die. In this situation, if he didn't want to die, he could only choose to surrender. Chapter 785. You surrendered? The Demorta sword in Murong Yu's hand was floating above Ao Feng. If Ao Feng had reacted a second later, the Demorta sword would have cut him in half. I've surrendered. I'm willing to surrender to you, Ao Feng said sadly. As he spoke, he transformed back into his human form. However, at this moment, his aura was chaotic and weak. He probably had less than 2 million points of strength left. His strength was secondary. His body was the worst. His body was riddled with holes and was on the verge of collapsing. I'm afraid I won't be able to recover my strength in less than 100 million years, Ao Feng said sadly. However, he was somewhat disheartened. However, he didn't want to die. It was better to live than to die. The longer one lived, the less one wanted to die. Ao Feng was such a person. It wasn't that he was afraid of death. After all, as long as he was alive, there was hope. However, if he died, he would have nothing left. Moreover, Ao Feng also realized Murong Yu's unlimited potential. A late immortal monarch with the strength of a late immortal monarch. It was only a matter of time before someone like him ascended to godhood. Ao Feng believed that Murong Yu's deity tribulation would descend soon. Perhaps Murong Yu would be able to ascend, and they would be able to ascend to the immortal world too. They couldn't break through in the immortal world. However, if they were in the divine world, it wouldn't take long for them to ascend to godhood. Moreover, if Murong Yu failed his deity tribulation, he would die. Once Murong Yu died, those who were under Murong Yu's sole control would regain their freedom. No matter what, Ao Feng wouldn't be at a disadvantage. If he knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place. Don't resist, Murong Yu said faintly. At the same time, a suction force pulled Ao Feng into the Hichu Luoshu world. At the same time, Murong Yu kept the heaven-shaking arrow, the Inyan cauldron, and entered the Hichu Luoshu world with Xiongtian. After entering the Hichu Luoshu world, Murong Yu immediately extracted Ao Feng's soul. Long delays may lead to many dreams, and changes may occur if they delay. Ha ha! When Murong Yu refined Ao Feng's soul, he suddenly laughed. Ao Feng and Xiongtian looked at each other. They didn't know what Murong Yu was laughing about. Is it that funny? Even if he subdued me, I would still be a cripple. Ao Feng thought that Murong Yu was laughing because of him, but he didn't think so. His injuries were extremely severe, and it would probably take tens of millions of years for him to recover. According to the structure of the immortal world, tens of millions of years later, it would be too late. Was Murong Yu laughing because he'd subdued Ao Feng? Of course, subduing Ao Feng was worthy of Murong Yu's laughter. This was because Ao Feng's injuries, which would take hundreds of millions of years to recover, didn't pose any pressure to him. In his eyes, Ao Feng's injury was just a small wound, a flesh wound. However, even so, they weren't worthy of Murong Yu's laughter. The reason he was laughing was because, Ao Feng, you once killed a disciple of the Heavenly Punisher Palace? Murong Yu suppressed his laughter, then looked at Ao Feng with a serious expression. What's wrong with you? You even sealed his strange energy? Master, I did kill an immortal sovereign not long ago. It had even imprisoned that ball of power of his. That energy was too strange. Although it wasn't very strong, it seemed to have consciousness. No matter how I tried to refine it, I couldn't refine it. As he spoke, Ao Feng flipped his hand, and a gray energy appeared in his palm. Origin energy! Xiongtian couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the small ball of energy. As a former Punisher, he was very familiar with the origin energy of the immortal world. Although the origin energy in Ao Feng's hand didn't belong to the Xiongtian world of cultivation, he was certain that it was the origin energy of the immortal world. At the same time, he finally understood why Murong Yu was laughing so loudly. It wasn't because of Ao Feng, but because of the origin energy of the immortal world. It really is the origin energy of the immortal world. Murong Yu grew excited. When he'd been refining Ao Feng's soul, he'd occasionally seen Ao Feng seal a strange energy. He couldn't help but read Ao Feng's memories. He quickly realized that the energy was most likely the origin energy of the immortal world. If I can control this cultivation world, my strength will definitely reach 3 million dragon force. I might even be able to advance to the immortal emperor realm. Murong Yu was incomparably excited. If he could reach 3 million dragon power or break through to the immortal emperor realm, he'd be even more confident in the Elixir King continent. Ao Feng, can you give me this energy? Murong Yu asked calmly, suppressing his excitement. Of course. This ball of energy is useless to me anyway. Ao Feng handed the ball of origin energy to Murong Yu without any hesitation. Murong Yu's heart grew even more excited when he received it. However, he didn't refine it immediately. Ao Feng, I'll help you stabilize your injuries now. After a while, I'll completely heal your injuries. Murong Yu said in a deep voice. At the same time, the life energy began to surge into Ao Feng's body and cleanse it. Every time it cleansed his body, Ao Feng's injuries healed a little. Ao Feng was shocked by such a terrifying recovery ability. However, Murong Yu only helped him stabilize his injuries before leaving the place. After swallowing the bloodthirsty pill, Ao Feng would be in a weakened state for a few days. 3 days passed in a blink of an eye. After regaining his peak strength, Murong Yu began to refine the ball of origin energy. Just like before, it increased Murong Yu's strength by 100,000 dragon power. Murong Yu's strength reached 2,800,000 dragon power, which was comparable to an ordinary late immortal venerable. In terms of combat strength, ordinary late immortal venerables were no match for Murong Yu. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. However, Murong Yu wasn't satisfied with this. His goal was to become a quasi-god, or even a true god. After increasing his strength by 100,000 dragon power, Murong Yu immediately appeared in the origin space of the immortal world. He began to control the cultivation world. During this process, Murong Yu's strength continued to rise. 2,900,000, 2,910,000, 2,999,999. With just one more dragon's power, Murong Yu's power would break through to 3 million dragons' power. Once he crossed this hurdle, he would become a true late-stage immortal venerable. Of course, this was only in terms of strength. However, at the last step, Murong Yu was stuck. Murong Yu knew that his strength had once again reached its limit. If he couldn't break through, his power wouldn't be able to continue growing. Right now, he was at the late stage of the immortal monarch realm. In other words, as long as he broke through to the immortal emperor realm, his strength would be able to reach the threshold of 3 million, or even higher. Since that's the case, I shall break through to the immortal emperor realm today. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. He did not leave the origin space of the world of cultivation. Instead, he cultivated here. He was extremely confident that he could break through to the immortal emperor realm in a short time. This was because after refining the origin space of the world of cultivation, his talent had increased once again. The chaotic celestial record had also begun to loosen. Level 3, Level 2, Perfection, Breakthrough now. The power in his body began to circulate crazily. Murong Yu circulated the chaotic celestial record to the maximum. Waves of violent power surged continuously, trying to break through to the next realm. With every flush, Murong Yu could feel his comprehension of the primal chaos celestial record growing deeper. The primal chaos celestial record also grew more refined, and he was one step closer to the great circle of the third layer and second stage. At the same time, Murong Yu's realm began to loosen. It was getting looser and looser, and he was about to break through. On the first day, the barrier to the next realm had loosened by half. On the second day, The barrier to the next realm had loosened by more than half. On the third day, Murong suddenly roared in his heart. Chaotic celestial record, immortal emperor realm, break through now. At the same time, the power in his body began to surge crazily like never before. Rumble. Before Murong could finish his roar, a series of earth-shattering sounds erupted from his body. At this moment, Murong clearly saw that the chaotic celestial record had finally broken through. He had entered the second stage of the third stage, the Great Perfection Realm. At the same time, Murong body violently shook when the primal chaos celestial record broke through. The barrier to the immortal Emperor realm that had been stuck in front of him had been broken through. At this moment, Murong eyes suddenly opened up, as if he had arrived in a new world. Early stage Immortal Emperor. Finally, Murong had broken through the barrier that had troubled many immortal lords for their entire lives and rushed to the Immortal Emperor realm. The Immortal Emperor was the Emperor of Immortals, a supreme existence revered by all immortals. He was second only to one and above all. Rumble. At the same time that he broke through to the next realm, his original power suddenly increased by 1 dragon force. It had reached 3 million dragon force. And this was only the beginning. When Murong's power reached 3 million dragon force, it was as if it had triggered a butterfly effect. 1 dragon force after another roared and appeared out of thin air. 3,100,000, 3,200,000, as his power surged wildly. Murong's meridians also rapidly expanded. At the same time, the powerful power was also tempering his body. It allowed his body to approach a higher level. Quasi-god weapon. In other words, a quasi-god weapon. 3,500,000. It didn't take long for Murong's dragon force to surpass Nangong Jun's and reach 3,500,000 dragon force. His power continued to soar and soon reached 3,600,000. Chapter 786. 3. 9 million earthly dragon power for million earthly dragon power. The power within Murong's body continued to increase explosively. Soon, he surpassed Sun Haoshan and the others and reached 4 million earth dragon power. Moreover, what shocked Murong was that when his earthly dragon power reached 4 million earthly dragon power, it didn't stop. Instead, it continued to increase, as if it could increase without limit. For 1,100,000, for 1,300,000, for 1,500,000. Murong was shocked, but he was also pleasantly surprised at the same time. As a cultivator, he longed to become more powerful. The more powerful, the better. Could it be that I'll break through to 5 million earthly dragon power in one go? Murong thought in shock. At this time, his power had skyrocketed to 8 million. He only needed 200,000 earthly dragon power to reach the quasi-god realm. A quasi-god's power was between 5 million earthly dragon power and 10 million earthly dragon power. Any immortal venerable who reached 5 million earthly dragon power could be called a quasi-god realm. And the quasi-god AO phone that Murong subdued only had 5 million earthly dragon power. However, although AO phone wasn't strong, his physical body was very strong. He was able to resist the attacks of the G clan and the palace master of the Immortal Palace, who were much stronger than him, and escape. However, the rate at which Murong's strength was increasing had slowed down. 9,900,000 Earth Dragon's energy. Murong observed his Earth Dragon's energy as he grew nervous. 4. 91 million. 4. 96 million. 4. 99 million. In the end, I only need 1 more earthly dragon power to break through to 5 million earthly dragon power. However, at this time, Murong's power stopped increasing. Just 1 more earthly dragon power. Just 1 more earthly dragon power. Murong was very unwilling, but at the same time, he was a little discouraged. Although there was only 1 earthly dragon power between 4.99 million earthly dragon power and 5 million earthly dragon power. The difference between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. After all, one could only be considered a quasi-god realm after reaching 5 million earthly dragon power. Without reaching 5 million dragons of power, no matter how powerful one was, one would never reach the quasi-god realm. If it had been an ordinary person with 4,999,999 earth dragon power, they would have been crushed to death by a quasi-god with 5 million earth dragon power. This was not a matter of strength, but a matter of realm. With a higher realm, the quality of his aura, pressure, and power were all extremely high. They could easily crush low-level existences. In fact, the highest realm in the world of immortals was the immortal sovereign. There were no quasi-gods or demigods. Strictly speaking, the quasi-god realm did not exist. It was just a subdivision of the immortal venerable realm. However, quasi-gods were much stronger than immortal venerables. No matter who it was, as long as they reached 5 million earthen dragons of power, their power, lethality, and everything else would transform and become even more powerful. An expert with 5 million Earth Dragon Force was at least 2 times stronger than an expert with 4 million Earth Dragon Force. The difference could even be tens or hundreds of times. Murong Yu also knew that although he was only 1 dragon's power away from reaching the quasi-god realm, however, the difference in strength was too great. If he could reach the quasi-god realm, he would be many times stronger than he was now. His body and everything else would be stronger. Attack the last dragon's power. Murong Yu did not give up and began to attack. However, his power had already stopped growing. No matter how he attacked, he could not break through. It was as if he had reached his limit. Murong Yu sighed and stood up, about to leave the origin space of the cultivation world. However, at this time, Murong Yu's body trembled. Rumble. An earth-shattering explosion erupted from Murong Yu's body. Then, illusory earth dragon figures involuntarily appeared above Murong Yu's head. They were so densely packed that they blotted out the sun and covered the sky. 4,999,999,999 dragon energy. The illusory earth dragon figures were extremely condensed, ferocious, and roaring. They exuded a terrifying draconic aura that could intimidate myriad worlds. What's going on? Murong Yu frowned slightly. He just wanted to suppress it, but he was shocked to find that he could not suppress the appearance of the illusory earth dragon. At this time, Murong Yu was surprised to find that a crack slowly appeared in the void above his head. The space was torn apart. The next moment, a black dragon head slowly peeked out from the crack. Earth dragon figure. Seeing the black dragon head, Murong Yu's heart could not help but tremble. Then, he looked at the illusory earth dragon figure that was slowly emerging from the void with a blazing expression. He wished he could reach out his hand and grab the illusory earth dragon figure out of the void. The illusory earth dragon figure peeked out of the void and seemed to be looking around in fear. It seemed to be hesitating whether to come out or not. This made Murong Yu very anxious. However, Murong Yu knew that this was not something that could be rushed. It was definitely a miracle that such a situation occurred. More than 4 million illusory earth dragons circled around happily, constantly roaring at the illusory earth dragon figure in the crack. It was unknown what they were saying. After a long while, the earth dragon silhouette seemed to have made up its mind. It roared at the sky, and with a sway of its body, it charged out of the spatial crack and joined the ranks of the 4 million-plus draconic force cultivators. At this moment, Murong Yu's body shook violently. He had finally reached 5 million illusory earth dragons. Quasi-god realm. Rumble, earth-shattering sounds constantly erupted from Murong Yu's body. Waves of incomparably powerful aura were constantly emitted. At this time, Murong Yu was surprised to see that his physical body and strength had undergone another transformation. His physical body had surpassed that of an emperor weapon and was infinitely rushing towards the level of a quasi-god weapon. His meridians had also expanded by dozens of times. The most terrifying thing was Murong Yu's strength. The gap between an immortal venerable and a quasi-god realm is so huge. Even 10 of me from before would not be a match for one of me now. My strength is so strong now, almost 10 times stronger than when I had more than 4 million illusory earth dragons. Feeling the incomparably powerful strength in his body, Murong Yu almost howled. 10 times the difference in strength. The current Murong Yu could easily kill him, who had not yet reached the quasi-god realm, with a single punch. If he were to face an uninjured AO foam again, Murong Yu was confident that he could beat AO foam within 10 moves. This was his strength after reaching the quasi-god realm. The difference from when he had more than 2 million illusory earth dragons was huge. I've finally reached the quasi-god realm. Ha! Murong Yu finally could not help but laugh wildly. Early immortal emperor realm, quasi-god realm, it's most suitable to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. Murong Yu sneered in his heart. His quasi-god realm was a bit different. Strictly speaking, there was a huge gap between him and ordinary quasi-gods. Ordinary quasi-gods were above the late-stage immortal venerate realm. Whether it was the realm or strength, they were all the same. However, Murong Yu is only an early immortal emperor realm. An early immortal emperor realm, quasi-god realm strength. If Murong Yu did not show it, he was only an immortal emperor. However, if he unleashed his full strength, he would be a real quasi-god. An early immortal emperor realm, quasi-god realm strength. Once I reach the late immortal emperor realm, wouldn't I surpass all quasi-gods? In that case, I don't need to reach the immortal venerable realm to ascend to godhood. Murong Yu laughed mischievously. If he continued in this state, he indeed did not need to reach the immortal venerable realm and then undergo the divine tribulation to become godhood. He could undergo the divine tribulation at the immortal emperor realm. Of course, the difference between the immortal emperor realm and the immortal venerable realm was huge. Whether it was the immortal emperor realm or the immortal venerable realm, Murong Yu was not in a hurry. With my current strength, I can go against the Ji dynasty and the palace lord of the immortal palace. As long as I find the breakthrough pill, the primal chaos Shangzhen, will officially appear and become the third strongest power in the immortal world. I will even destroy the Divine Union and the Immortal World Alliance and unify the immortal world. Anyone will be trampled under my feet. Murong Yu laughed coldly in his heart. My physical body is already infinitely close to the level of a quasi-god weapon. If I go out and use the tribulation lightning to temper my physical body will be able to step into the level of a quasi-god weapon. At that time, my strength will be even stronger. I'm afraid those heaven-defying pills in the Pill King continent have not appeared yet. There are also no signs of breakthrough pills and the like appearing in the world. Forget it. I'll go back and undergo the tribulation first before going to the Pill King continent. Murong Yu thought to himself as he appeared in the Hichu, Luoshu world. My lord, you've broken through. Cheong Tian was originally cultivating. When he felt something strange, he opened his eyes and saw Murong Yu. With one look, Cheong Tian's heart skipped a beat. He could not see through Murong Yu's cultivation at all. It was unfathomable. Moreover, the aura that Murong Yu faintly exuded made his heart palpitate. This is the aura of a quasi-god. Cheong Tian was extremely shocked. He felt the same aura from Murong Yu's body as well as from Ao Feng's. Moreover, he knew that Murong Yu's aura was even stronger than Ao Feng's. In other words, in just a few days, Murong Yu's strength had increased tremendously. He had reached the quasi-god realm, surpassing Ao Feng in all aspects. At this moment, Cheong Tian was truly subdued. Murong Yu nodded. Ignoring the shocked Cheong Tian, he flashed and appeared near Ao Feng, who was recuperating. Swoosh! As Murong Yu approached, Ao Feng opened his eyes and looked at Murong Yu. Then he was stunned. Quasi-god realm? Suddenly, Ao Feng roared and jumped up from the ground. He was really stunned by Murong Yu. How long had it been? From a quasi-god with just over 2 million dragon power to 5 million dragon power? Was he still human? What kind of breakthrough speed was this? In addition to being shocked, Ao Fong was also injured. He was deeply affected by Morongyu. Chapter 787. In the depths of the Pellet King continent. Rumble, all of a sudden, an incomparably powerful aura soared into the sky. It was earth-shattering as it soared into the heavens. At the same time, beams of dazzling divine light shot up into the sky. Thunder rumbled, shaking heaven and earth. It shocked the entire Pellet King continent. What a powerful elixir aura! Could it be that a divine elixir has appeared? The experts on the Pellet King continent were shocked by this strange phenomenon. They all looked in the direction where the divine light had erupted from with horror. It must be a divine elixir. It's accompanied by thunder. Could it be the legendary God's Tribulation Elixir? It doesn't matter if it's a God's Tribulation Elixir or not. It must be a heaven-defying divine elixir. Let's go. We'll lose everything if we're late. Someone had already started flying in the direction of the divine light. Such a heaven-defying phenomenon must have attracted the attention of the quasi-gods. We won't be able to get the elixir if we go. We'll be killed instead. Someone said worriedly. The bold will be full, and the cowardly will be starved to death. When a treasure appears, it belongs to the virtuous. Maybe the divine elixir will be mine. What's there to be afraid of? In an instant, everyone on the Pellet King continent, regardless of their strength, rushed in the direction of the divine elixir. At the same time, a crack appeared in the void outside the Pellet King continent. A figure stepped out from the crack. It was Morongyu. Just in time. No matter what kind of divine elixir it is, I must get it. Morongyu looked at the dazzling divine light in the distance. He squinted his eyes and smiled mysteriously. At the same time, he turned into a beam of light and rushed toward the divine elixir. Morongyu had broken through to the quasi-god realm. Not only had he healed Ao Feng's injuries, but he had also helped him return to his peak state. At the same time, he had successfully passed the heavenly tribulation. After passing the heavenly tribulation, Murongyu's strength was even stronger than before. He was confident that he could compete with Ji Hao and the others. This was a ruin of a building. It was unknown how many people had searched through this place, but they found nothing. At this moment, the dazzling divine light was being emitted from beneath the ruins. The divine light soared into the sky. What a rich pill fragrance! At this moment, countless experts had gathered around the divine light. Each and every one of them tried their best to breathe in the rich medicinal fragrance in the air. They were even shocked to discover that just by breathing in the fragrance of these pills, their strength seemed to have increased a little. His physical body had been tempered to become even stronger. Although it wasn't much, one shouldn't forget that this was only the faint aura emitted by the divine pill. Just the medicinal fragrance alone has such an effect. If I can get this divine pill, won't my strength directly soar to the quasi-god realm? Or even directly become a god? Many experts in the crowd looked at the center of the ruins with greedy expressions. However, no one dared to approach the ruins. This was because several experts were already standing in the void in front of them. Epic, Palace Master of the Immortal Palace, Holy Gates Holy Master. There were a total of 10 of them. 10 quasi-god level experts. Among them, the 4 major powers of the Immortal Realm Alliance each had a quasi-god. In addition to G, the Divine Union had 2 more quasi-gods. The remaining 3 quasi-gods didn't belong to the Divine Light or the Immortal Realm Alliance. They were super old monsters hidden in the Immortal Realm. 10 quasi-gods, one by one. The super experts stared at the stone man, floating in the void with a horrified look on their faces. The aura emitted by G and the others was so strong that they didn't dare to approach. This was also because they didn't deliberately release their quasi-god aura. Otherwise, the immortal venerables wouldn't dare to approach within 100 million miles. After all, those were 10 quasi-gods. Under the ruins, the dazzling divine light was getting more and more dazzling. The aura was also getting stronger. This was because the divine pill was getting closer and closer to being born. You want to snatch the divine pill from the Immortal Realm Alliance? The palace master of the Immortal Palace, Lu Ran, glanced at Ji and the others and said indifferently, "Among the 10 quasi-gods, the Immortal Realm Alliance had 4. Apart from the 3 quasi-gods in the Divine Union, the rest were all itinerant cultivators. They fought for themselves and weren't a match for the Immortal Realm Alliance. In other words, the Immortal Realm Alliance was the strongest here. In the face of external enemies, the 4 of them were united against external enemies. Of course, it wasn't certain if they were really united. At the very least, they were now united. Don't tell me you want to keep the divine pill for yourself." Ji put his hands behind his back and didn't say a word. He didn't even look at Lu Ran. However, a quasi-god expert beside him snorted coldly and looked at the palace master of the Immortal Palace with disdain. Treasures belong to the virtuous. The other 3 quasi-gods glanced at each other, then nodded. For the time being, they were united. After all, they were itinerant cultivators. If they went up against the Divine Union or the Immortal Realm Alliance, they would definitely lose. They might even be killed. As for how they would divide the divine pill after they got it, this was a matter for the future. The Devil Sect Master, Tu Wanshue's eyes flashed with a cold light. "Do you mean to say that you're going to snatch it by yourselves?" As he spoke, the Devil Sect Master emitted rings of extremely violent aura, shaking in all directions and sweeping everything. Bang! 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 A terrifying aura erupted and immediately swept out in all directions like a tide. It immediately hit the nearby people who had greedy expressions on their faces. Immediately, some of the weaker people were directly turned into a bloody mist by the aura of the Devil Sect Master. Some of them didn't die, but they were seriously injured and spurted out blood. "Retreat, retreat quickly." Everyone was horrified. One by one, they retreated into the distance. Is this the aura of a quasi-god? It's so powerful. A mid-stage immortal venerable looked at the Devil Sect Master in horror and spurted out another mouthful of blood. An ordinary mid-stage immortal venerable only had the strength of 2 million dragons. They couldn't even withstand the aura of a quasi-god. What a terrifying aura. They haven't even started fighting. If they do, I'm afraid the entire Pill King continent will be destroyed. Some people continued to retreat with an ugly expression. After witnessing the terrifying aura of the Devil Sect Master, they knew how insignificant they were. Tu Wanshue, retract your aura. We're all quasi-gods. You can only scare those mortals. A quasi-god called Zhou Nin said faintly. Since they were all quasi-gods, the aura of the Devil Sect Master was useless against them. The Devil Sect Master harumphed and retracted his aura. They couldn't make a move now. Otherwise, others would reap the benefits. They might as well wait until the divine pill appeared and snatch it. They believed that the 4 of them could definitely snatch the divine pill with their combined strength. It's so lively. Seems like I'm not too late. At this moment, a chuckle came from afar. Everyone turned around and saw a young man in black robes walking towards them from afar. He crossed billions of space-time in a single step and arrived at the void above their heads. Then, he slowly walked towards the ruins. An early immortal sovereign? Huh? At first, everyone was shocked when they saw the young man walking towards them. They thought that he was some powerful expert. However, when a young man approached them, they couldn't help but laugh. They all looked at the young man in black with disdain. "You're just an immortal sovereign. Kid, do you think you're a quasi-god? Get down here." "Haha, are you kidding me? Kid, which mountain did you come from? Do you think you're invincible? You're just an arrogant second generation. You don't know what's good for you. You're just courting death." All of them looked at the black-clothed young man in the sky with mocking, disdainful, and contemptuous gazes. The black-clothed young man also had a look of disdain on his face. However, not everyone in the crowd looked at the young man in black with disdain. Among them, there were also some people who were looking at him in shock. "My lord's strength has broken through to the early immortal sovereign. What realm has his true strength reached? Has he reached the quasi-god realm?" Sun Haoshan, looked at Murong Yu with burning eyes. He couldn't wait to rush up to Murong Yu and ask. At the same time, Nangong Jun, Nangong Longfeng, and the others all looked at Murong Yu with shock. They knew that before coming to the Pill King continent, Murong Yu was only an intermediate monarch immortal. However, at that time, Murong Yu had more than 2 million Earth Dragon energy. Now that he had broken through to the immortal sovereign realm from the monarch immortal sovereign realm, Murong Yu's strength would definitely skyrocket. They all looked at Murong Yu with anticipation. They knew that now that Murong Yu had appeared in front of Ji Hao and the others, he was going to fight. I wonder if my lord can kill a quasi-god realm expert. I'm really looking forward to it. Sun Haoshan and the others trembled with excitement. Murong Yu. While everyone was looking at Murong Yu with disdain, a voice filled with endless killing intent and resentment was heard from the crowd. At the same time, a figure soared into the sky and slowly walked towards Murong Yu, leaving a footprint in the air with each step. Every step he took shattered a large part of the void. The young man in black was none other than Murong Yu. Murong Yu couldn't help but be stunned when he heard someone calling his name. Then he smiled brightly and said, "Jiaoli, long time no see. Haven't you had enough of the previous few times? Are you going to deliver yourself to me now?" The man who soared into the sky was Jiaoli, the deputy leader of the Divine Union. At this moment, his strength had already broken through to the late immortal venerable realm with more than 3 million Earth Dragon energy. Chapter 788. Jiaoli was enraged when he heard Murong Yu's words. Ever since he had met Murong Yu for the first time, he had been in big trouble every time he met Murong Yu. What Jiaoli hated the most was that Murong Yu had almost killed him and robbed him of the origin source of the cultivation world in his body. Murong Yu had also stripped him of his rights as a punisher and turned him into a cripple. Murong Yu had not killed him, and he had been rescued by Ji Luo. Ji Luo had even helped him improve his cultivation base, allowing him to reach the late-stage Immortal Venerate realm. Ji Luo had also made him the deputy alliance leader of the Divine Union. It could even be said that in the immortal world, Ji Luo's full strength was greater than Jiao Li's palm. However, the stronger he was, the greater his full strength, the more intense Jiao Li's hatred for Murong Yu became. So what if his cultivation base was high? So what if he was the deputy alliance leader? The humiliation that Murong Yu had given him was still lingering in his heart. Moreover, only he knew that although he was the deputy alliance leader of the Divine Union on the surface, he was actually just Ji Luo's dog. If Ji Luo wanted him to die today, he would definitely not live past tomorrow. Murong Yu, you will definitely die today. Jiaoli gritted his teeth and glared at Murong Yu with a venomous look in his eyes. His gaze was even more creepy than Ao Feng's, who was a giant snake. "You want to kill me?" Murong Yu looked at Jiao Li with an astonished expression. His eyes were filled with disdain. Jiao Li was instantly enraged when he saw the disdain in Murong Yu's eyes. With a furious roar, he shattered the space beneath his feet with a stomp. His figure then turned into a streak of light as he charged toward Murong Yu. During this process, Jiao Li raised his strength to the limit and gathered it all on his fist. His fist broke the sky and fiercely bombarded Murong Yu. "Die for me!" Jiao Li roared with a ferocious expression. It was as if he could already see Murong Yu being turned into a bloody mist by his fist. At the same time, many people in the crowd revealed looks of disdain. Jiao Li was a late immortal venerable, while Murong Yu was only an early immortal sovereign. The difference between their strength was huge. In the eyes of many people, Murong Yu was dead meat. However, Sun Haoshan and the others were excited. Knowing Murong Yu's strength, they all knew that Jiao Li would definitely die. Murong Yu. Above the ruins, Ji Hao and the others who were at loggerheads turned to look at Murong Yu. Their eyes were filled with greed. Murong Yu had Hichu Luo Shu, which was a treasure that they all wanted. Even Ji Hao's heart was filled with greed. However, they did not make a move. They all had scruples, not because of Murong Yu, but because of the other quasi-god experts around them. They all knew that once they made a move, the others would definitely make a move too. At that time, the world would be in chaos. Moreover, Moronyu had Hichu Luoshu, and his strength was not bad. Most importantly, he could hide in the Hichu Luoshu world at any time. Once they entered the Hichu Luoshu world, Ji Hao and the others would not be able to find Moronyu at all. They all knew how powerful Hichu Luoshu was. At this time, Lu Ran, the palace master of the Immortal Palace, looked at Moronyu indifferently. Under his indifferent eyes, there was a sharp killing intent and a trace of regret. He was regretting. Yes, he was regretting. He regretted that he did not kill Moronyu earlier. If he had made a move earlier, perhaps Hichu Luoshu would have been his. Because, in the entire immortal realm, he was the first to discover that Moronyu had Hichu Luoshu. Moreover, at that time, Morongyu's strength was weak, and anyone from the Immortal Palace could have killed him. However, for various reasons, the Immortal Palace had never been able to take down Moronyu. Now, Morongyu's wings had hardened. If they want to get Hichu Luoshu, it would be a lot more difficult. Ji Hao saved you that day. Today, Ji Hao is also here. I'd like to see if he can save your life again. Moronyu sneered and glanced at Ji Hao from the corner of his eye. However, Ji Hao's expression did not change. He just looked indifferently to the side, as if he was just a bystander. In this regard, Moronyu felt some disdain in his heart. This guy was just trying to act tough. I'd like to see if you'll still be so indifferent if I kill Jiao Li. Moronyu sneered in his heart. At this moment, Jiao Li's fist had already arrived in front of Moronyu. Die for me. Jiao Li roared in anger. A terrifying power erupted, even shattering the sky, and rushed towards Moronyu. If it was an ordinary early-stage Immortal Emperor, he would have been blown to smithereens. However, Moronyu was not an ordinary early-stage Immortal Emperor, but a quasi-god. You're overestimating yourself. Moronyu sneered and similarly sent out a punch. Jiao Li sneered, and his fist accelerated towards Moronyu. It was as if he could already see the scene of Moronyu being killed by this punch. Jiao Li, don't you want to die? I'll fulfill your wish now. Moronyu suddenly said. When Jiao Li sneered, his strength suddenly erupted. Not good. At this moment, a trace of coldness flashed across Ji Hao's eyes, and he cried out in his heart. Just when he was about to make a move, asterisk bang. Asterisk Morongyu's divine fist had already arrived, landing on Jiao Li's body. After an earth-shattering sound, Jiao Li was directly blown to smithereens, disappearing from the world. Not even a drop of blood was left behind. Even his soul had been blown to smithereens by Moronyu. He was thoroughly dead. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people's faces were filled with incomparable shock. Moronyu's punch actually didn't explode with much strength. However, it wasn't only the explosion of strength that could cause such shock. An early-stage Immortal Venerable had blown a late-stage Immortal Venerable with more than 3 million Earth Dragon force into smithereens. This kind of shock was even greater. He killed him with a single punch? This can't be real, right? Each of the experts was shocked, and their hearts were filled with disbelief. Although they couldn't believe it, they knew that their eyes weren't deceiving them, because they really saw Jiao Li being blown to smithereens by Moronyu. He was directly annihilated between heaven and earth. If there was hell and ghosts in this world, Jiao Li wouldn't even be able to become a ghost. While the crowd was still in shock, the faces of the palace master and the others couldn't help but change slightly. With their strength, they could easily kill Jiao Li. However, they couldn't. Jiao Li was directly annihilated with a single punch, leaving nothing behind. What kind of strength is this? Is he stronger than me? The Devil Sect Master, Tu Wanshue's eyes flickered with ominous light, but his heart was filled with shock. It's impossible for him to be stronger than me. He's just an early-stage Immortal Venerable. Could it be that he's stronger than a quasi-god? The Palace Master of the Heavenly Penalty Palace frowned as he pondered. He must have used some means. Otherwise, it's absolutely impossible for him to be so clean. The Sacred Master of the Sacred Sect also frowned. No matter what the situation was, Murong Yu's punch had shocked most of the people present. Even the palace master and the others were looking at them with equal gazes. Before Murong Yu had unleashed his punch, although they had looked at him as if they were looking at an ant. They had looked at him as if they were looking at a superior existence. But now, they had raised Murong Yu to the same level of existence, which was worthy of their attention. Just when Murong Yu felt the gazes of the people around him and was secretly pleased, he saw a ball of invisible force floating from the place where Jiao Li was killed and rushing towards Ji. Murong Yu frowned slightly. He stretched out his big hand and grabbed at the force in the air. However, the force was extremely fast. With a swoosh, it disappeared on the spot and finally entered Ji's body. What kind of power is this? Murong Yu frowned as he looked at Ji Hao and muttered to himself, "Young master, that's divine force. Only gods can have it. It's just that it's too weak." At this moment, Hichu's voice suddenly sounded in Murong Yu's ears. Murong Yu's body shook violently. It's divine force? That's Ji's power? Divine force was a power that only gods could have. Just like a mortal core power, it could only be possessed first. Mortals could not have it. The difference between divine force and a mortal core power was the difference between a mortal core power and mortal power. No matter how strong a mortal core power was, it was no match for divine force. Because of the level and nature, divine force could kill any immortal core power. This was the reason why Ji's strength was so strong. Even if Ji was a fallen god, even if he did not have a godhead, even if he was now only a quasi-god. But after all, he was once a god. He also had divine force. Even if this divine force was very weak, so weak that it could be ignored by gods. But this was not the god realm, but the immortal realm. In the immortal realm, even quasi-gods did not have divine force. Ji, who had divine force, was definitely the strongest. If not for the fact that Ji's divine force was very weak, his strength would have already swept across the immortal realm. Could it be that Ji is using divine force to increase Jiao Li's strength? Murong Yu thought to himself. His eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Ji. At this moment, Ji's expression had already returned to normal. In fact, his expression had only changed slightly when Jiao Li was killed. "I killed your deputy alliance leader. Don't you have anything to say?" Murong Yu looked at Ji and suddenly laughed. "He's just a piece of trash. So what if he's dead?" Ji said indifferently. At the same time, he looked at Murong Yu and said, "If you are willing to join the Divine Union, you can immediately become the deputy alliance leader of the Divine Union. You will be second only to one person and above everyone else." Hearing this, not only was Murong Yu shocked, but even the palace master of the Immortal Palace and the others were shocked. They all looked at Ji with a puzzled expression, not knowing what Ji was up to. Chapter 789. Although Murong Yu is only at the initial stage of the Immortal Emperor realm, I'm afraid his strength is comparable to that of a quasi-god. Moreover, he has the Hichu Luo Shu. If he joins the Divine Union, the Divine Union's strength will skyrocket. At that time, the Immortal World Alliance will. We definitely cannot let him join the Divine Union. Tu Wanxue thought to himself. At the same time, he exchanged glances with the other three and saw a flash of light in each other's eyes. The four of them had the same thought. They definitely could not let Murong Yu join the Divine Union. Ji, do you want Murong Yu's people? Or do you want his Hichu Luo Shu? The sacred leader of the sacred sect looked at Ji and laughed, then pretended to be casual. As he spoke, he glanced at Murong Yu from the corner of his eye. It was as if he was reminding Murong Yu not to join the Divine Union. Otherwise, he would not be able to return. Hichu Luo Shu. Ji laughed disdainfully and continued. "Do you think I'm a country bumpkin like all of you? What kind of treasure have I not seen in the divine world? Although the Hichu Luo Shu is all right, it's just an ordinary plaything. As long as I return to the divine world, I can obtain any kind of treasure, including treasures that are countless times stronger than the Hichu Luo Shu." Hearing this, Everyone was shocked. Only then did they remember that Ji was a fallen god in the divine world. Although this guy had fallen, it was hard to guarantee that he was not a super existence of some great power in the divine world. Once he ascended and returned to the divine world, he might really obtain countless treasures like he said. Most importantly, in the entire immortal world, perhaps only Ji-Kai knew what the real divine world was like. They had only heard of the existence of the divine world and were indeed country bumpkins. Murong-Yu's face was also filled with shock. Of course, this was just an act. In reality, he was laughing coldly in his heart. Hichu Luoshu is just an ordinary treasure. Murong-Yu snorted at this. How could the treasure in his hands be ordinary? Hichu Luoshu? Inyang Cauldron? Or was it the Chinkoan Bow and the heaven-shaking arrow? Just the Hichu Luoshu alone was known as the #1 book in the world. Not many treasures could compare to it. Indeed, Hichu Luoshu could attack, defend, teleport, and accelerate time. It was like a real world inside. What treasure under the heavens could compare to Hichu Luoshu? Furthermore, as long as you join the Divine Union, I guarantee that you will be able to ascend and become a god. As long as we destroy the Immortal World Alliance and unify the Immortal World, we can ascend together. Destroy the Immortal Realm Alliance and unify the Immortal Realm? Murong-Yu fell silent. He was even more suspicious of Ji Hao's divine union. This guy was originally a fallen god, so why did he want to unify the immortal world? In the eyes of the gods, the immortal realm was merely a low-level plane. They wouldn't even spare it a second glance, nor would they take the trouble to unify it. Could it be that there will be great benefits after unifying the immortal world? Just like the cultivation world, the immortal world also has an origin source. After refining the immortal world's origin source, one can freely enter and exit the immortal world and even teleport to the god world. Murong-Yu vaguely grasped something in his heart, but in the end, he didn't grasp anything. He only knew that unifying the immortal world would definitely bring great benefits to Ji Hao. This was something Murong-Yu didn't want to see. Even if there are benefits, they're mine. What divine union? What immortal world alliance? Step aside. Murong-Yu sneered in his heart. Can I really ascend in broad daylight? Murong-Yu's face revealed his interest. Ji Hao nodded. It's just becoming a god. It's no big deal. I am a god. The palace master of the immortal palace, Zhou Nan, and the others were tempted. Why were they fighting here? It was nothing more than some divine pills that could increase their chances of becoming a god. If Ji Hao could really make them ascend, then what was the point of fighting with others for divine pills? They might as well rely on Ji Hao. Seeing the others' expressions, Murong-Yu's heart sank. He immediately looked at Ji Hao and sneered. It's true that you were once a god, but don't forget that you were reborn after falling. If becoming a god is as easy as you say, then why are you still in the immortal world? Would you be willing to be a quasi-god instead of returning to the god world to become a true god? If I'm not wrong, you don't even have a godhead, do you? You want to ascend without one? You're fooling a 3-year-old child. Ji Hao's expression suddenly changed. A cold and terrifying murderous intent spread out and suppressed Murong-Yu. At the same time, the others were shocked and reacted. If I want to ascend, it's just a matter of thought. The cold murderous intent rushed in front of Murong-Yu. Just as Murong-Yu was about to block the murderous intent, it disappeared like the tide. Ji Hao returned to his indifferent appearance. Ha ha! Everyone sneered. No one believed Ji Hao's nonsense anymore. Moreover, everyone present was a wily old fox. They'd rather believe themselves than others. Rather than believe Ji Hao, they'd rather believe the pills they'd obtained. At the very least, the pills wouldn't lie to them. For a moment, everyone fell silent. The golden light under the ruins became even more glaring. The golden light was dazzling. Hichu, do you know what kind of pill it is? Murong-Yu transmitted to Hichu. I don't know, Hichu replied bluntly. However, this pill's rank shouldn't be low. Perhaps it really is a god's tribulation pill. If it is, you must get your hands on it. What's the point of having a God's tribulation pill without a supremacy breakthrough pill? Morong was a bit speechless. Without a supremacy breakthrough pill, there's no way to increase the strength of primal chaos Shenzhen. Without enough immortal supremacies, Shenzhen wouldn't be a match for the Divine Union and the Immortal Realm Alliance, let alone destroy the Immortal Realm Alliance and unify the Immortal Realm. Young Master, do you think you'll ascend immediately after passing the God's tribulation? Hichu didn't say much, but he suddenly asked a seemingly unrelated question. Isn't that so? Morong asked doubtfully. No, passing the God's tribulation isn't like ascending the heavenly stairway and breaking open the immortal gate. However, there's one thing that's the same. You won't ascend immediately after passing the God's tribulation. What do you mean? Could it be that there's also a transformation period here? Morong's interest was piqued. In the cultivation world, after ascending the heavenly stairway and breaking open the immortal gate, one would enter the transformation period and transform into an immortal body. After transforming from a mortal body to an immortal body, one could ascend and become an immortal. Could it be that after passing the God's tribulation, there would be a transformation process? That's not the case. After passing the God's tribulation, there's no transformation period. In fact, after passing the God's tribulation, you can ascend to the God's realm as long as you're willing. Because whether it's condensing the Godhead or transforming the immortal body, it can only be done in the God's realm. However, after passing the God's tribulation, the experts are much stronger than ordinary late-stage immortal venerables. The weakest of them is at the prospective God realm. Morong's heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly smiled, saying, that means as long as a large number of people in Shenzhen pass the God's tribulation, they can still stay in the God's realm, and their strength is even stronger than immortal venerables. They're all prospective gods? Morong laughed in his heart. If that was the case, it was indeed much better than the breakthrough pill. The breakthrough pill could only raise a person to the immortal venerable realm, while the God's tribulation pill could make a person directly rush to the prospective God realm. How big was the gap between prospective God and immortal venerable? Millions of Earth Dragon power was the gap. Moreover, in the immortal realm, as long as one was an immortal emperor, they could trigger the God's tribulation without waiting for the immortal venerable realm. The breakthrough pill. No matter what, I have to get it. Morong looked at the ruins in front of him, thoughts flashing in his mind. Asterisk Kong Long. Asterisk suddenly, the golden light in the ruins exploded. The golden light became more and more dazzling, and everyone couldn't help but close their eyes. At the same time, a black shadow suddenly rose from the ruins and shot toward the sky in an attempt to escape from this place. Asterisk whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Asterisk almost at the same time, black shadows shot out from the ruins in all directions. Some of them were bottles of pills, and some were simply pills that shone with divine light. For a moment, the fragrance of pills filled the entire Dan King continent. This is the living dead pill. As long as the soul is still there, one pill can restore the body to its peak without any loss. All of a sudden, a late immortal venerable caught a pill that flew past him and burst into laughter. Bloodthirsty pill. Breakthrough emperor pill. All kinds of supreme grade pills flew out. There were countless of them in the sky. Morong was taken aback. He felt that something was wrong. This place was like a fountain of pills, and all kinds of pills were constantly shooting out. However, it didn't matter whether it was right or not. It would be a waste if he didn't take these pills. Morong harumphed coldly and reached out his big hand to grab the pills. The big hand expanded in the wind, covering half of the sky, and grabbed down. In an instant, Morong grabbed the hundreds of elixirs in his hand. Morong didn't even look at them and kept them into the Hichu Luoshu world. Then, he reached out his big hand again, grabbing the pills that were fleeing in all directions. At the same time, everyone in the Dan King continent was doing the same. They were crazily grabbing the pills. Even GMO was doing the same. However, during this process, the feeling of unease in Morong's heart grew even stronger. Immediately, he grabbed the pills that had been spat out and looked at Ji. Like the others, GMO was also constantly grabbing the pills in the void. However, Moronu noticed that he was being too casual about it. His mind didn't seem to be in these pills. His whole mind was focused on the ruins. At this moment, the ruins were still shooting out all kinds of heaven-defying pills. It was like an endless spring. Could this be the storeroom of the dance sect? Chapter 790. Just as Murong Yu had said, he didn't care about the pills that were spewing out. Just as Murong Yu had said, he had nothing left. Returning to the god realm wasn't as easy as he'd said. Without a godhead, he could only be considered a former god. He was no longer a god and didn't have the right to be one. Only with a godhead could one become a god. If one wanted to condense a godhead, they would have to go through the tribulation again. Only then could they sense the god realm and ascend to the god realm to condense a godhead again. However, the tribulation wasn't easy to pass. Even though Ji had once been a god, he wasn't completely confident that he could pass the tribulation. Therefore, to ensure that nothing went wrong, he had to get the god tribulation pill. There were 81 stages of the tribulation, each more terrifying than the last. If one could pass the tribulation, they would ascend to godhood. If not, their soul would scatter and they wouldn't even be able to become a ghost. Whoosh! All of a sudden, an exceptionally bright golden light shot out from the millions of pills. It blended in with the countless pills and shot into the sky. The power of the tribulation. The God tribulation pill. Ji was excited. He reached out with his large hand and grabbed at the golden light. Even if it was only a single pill, it could withstand the first stage of the tribulation. Passing the tribulation without suffering any damage was incomparably powerful. Just one pill could increase one's chances of ascending to godhood by 1 to 81. Ji had to get his hands on the God tribulation pill. However, just as Ji made his move, Murong Yu, who had been keeping an eye on him, made his move as well. The power of tribulation lightning. Could this be the legendary God tribulation pill? Murong Yu was excited. He needed the God tribulation pill. He didn't need too many, just one would do. With just one pill, he could use the Yin-Yang cauldron to mass-produce them. With just one pill, the Chaos Shenzhen could unify the world of immortals and become its overlord. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The moment Ji and Murong Yu made their move, the other quasi-gods made their move as well. Both of them stretched out their hands and grabbed at the pill that was soaring into the sky. Just like Murong Yu, they were constantly paying attention to Ji. Bastard. Seeing these people attacking at the same time, Ji Hao couldn't help but become furious. In an instant, he raised his strength to the limit. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk after an earth-shattering explosion, a violent energy erupted from his body, annihilating a large expanse of space and bombarding Murong Yu and the others like a torrent. Ji was the first to make a move. He knew that if he wanted to obtain the God Tribulation pill today, it would definitely be a bloody battle. What a powerful aura. It's at least over 6 million Earth and Dragon power. Murong Yu couldn't help but feel excited when he sensed the terrifying aura coming from Ji. The excitement of facing a super expert caused a powerful battle intent to rise from the bottom of Murong Yu's heart. At this moment, he even had the crazy thought of fighting Ji Yu to see who was better. However, he suppressed this thought as soon as it appeared. This was not a battle, but a fight over the God's tribulation pills. Chi-Chi, Ji's incomparably violent power swept out. The pills that were shot out simply couldn't withstand the terrifying impact and were shattered in the first moment. Retreat. Many of the immortal venerables around the ruins turned pale when they saw GMO unleashing his power. They quickly retreated. Rumble. At the same time, the two quasi-gods from the Divine Union made their move as well. A quasi-god named Little Wolf erupted with a terrifying power and charged at Murong Yu, who was the closest to him. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was so short that their hands had yet to grab the God Tribulation pill. You're courting death. Seeing Wolf attack him, Murong couldn't help but be furious. At the same time, another quasi-celestial from the Divine Union also threw a punch at Tu Wanshua, the sect master of the Devil Sect. Murong shouted angrily. He didn't fight back against Little Wolf. Instead, his figure flickered as he charged at the God Tribulation Pill. During this process, his power was raised to the maximum. Huge, pitch-black phantom wings appeared on his back and flickered with a sharp aura. The phantom wings flapped fiercely as Murong's entire body pounced on the God Tribulation Pill. His speed was even faster than GMO, who had made the first move. Scram! Everyone's expression changed when they saw Murong use speed. GMO roared as he threw a punch that shattered billions of space-time and charged at Murong. At the same time, the Palace Master of the Immortal Palace and the Palace Master of the Heavenly Punishing Palace also unleashed their powerful powers and charged at Murong. 8 quasi-gods all charged at Murong. Even though Murong was extremely powerful, his expression changed when faced with such a powerful lineup. Battle Character Art, Double Battle Strength. Bloodthirsty Pill, increased battle strength tenfold. Murong didn't panic in the face of danger. He used the Battle Character Art and swallowed a bloodthirsty pill. In an instant, his power increased by several times. With a swoosh, Murong took a step forward and disappeared from where he stood. Rumble. The moment he disappeared, the 8 quasi-gods' all-out attacks slammed into the space where Murong had been standing. A terrifying power erupted, annihilating the void within 100 million miles. A gigantic black hole appeared, and even the spatial turbulence was created. With a single step, Murong crossed hundreds of millions of miles and arrived before the God Tribulation Pill that was trying to escape the Pilking continent. He grabbed it with his big hand and held in his hand. Bang! 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 Although the God Tribulation Pill was in Murong's hand, it exploded with a powerful force that constantly attacked Murong, trying to break free. Even Murong couldn't help but reveal a look of astonishment upon seeing this powerful strength. Late Immortal Venerable Realm? It has reached 3 million Earth Dragon power? Murong looked at the God's Tribulation Pellet in his hand, which was emitting a dazzling golden light, with astonishment on his face. This was the first time he had encountered such a powerful pill. Moreover, this pill could use a powerful force to attack. An ordinary late Immortal Venerable wouldn't be able to catch up to the God Tribulation Pill, let alone control it. Of course, Murong wasn't an ordinary late Immortal Venerable. Even if you have the strength of a quasi-god, in my hands, even if you're a dragon, you'll still have to coil up and a tiger will have to crouch down. Murong sneered inwardly. A powerful energy seeped out of his body and sealed the God Tribulation Pellet. Then, he threw into the Hichu Luoshu world. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Asterisk after doing all this, the furious attacks of Ji and the others rushed to Murong's back. Murong chuckled as a pair of black illusory wings of light spread out from his back. Like a dark cloud covering the sky, they covered a large part of the sky. With a fierce flap, Murong soared into the sky and appeared in the void hundreds of millions of miles away, dodging the attacks of Ji and the others. Murong, leave the God Tribulation Pill behind. Ji roared. He stepped into the void and chased after Murong. During this process, his strength continued to increase, and soon it exceeded 7 million Earth Dragon power. He punched out again and again, trying to kill Murong. It's really the God Tribulation Pill. The Sacred Master and the others revealed a fiery expression. Why didn't they ascend after staying in the immortal world? It was because they didn't have the confidence to pass the God Tribulation. Now, a God Tribulation Pill had appeared. Even if it was only one God Tribulation Pill, it increased their chances of becoming a true God by 1 in 81. The probability of 1 in 81 seemed extremely small, but it was completely useless. But to them, this was of utmost importance. If they passed the first 81 heavenly realms, but their strength was exhausted, and they used up all their treasures, what would they use to pass the tribulation? They could only die under the most powerful heavenly tribulation. However, if they had the God tribulation pill, as long as they swallowed it, they could ignore the last heavenly tribulation and pass the God tribulation safely. Therefore, even if it was only 1 in 81, it could sometimes decide their life and death. Kill him. Everyone's hearts were burning with passion as they charged toward Murong Yu. Although Murong Yu's strength had increased by several times, he still felt a little scared in the face of 10 quasi-gods charging toward him. 10 quasi-gods. Their strength was too terrifying. Murong Yu wouldn't be afraid of any one of them, but if they swarmed him together, Murong Yu wasn't interested in accompanying them in their madness. Of course, if Murong Yu's strength was 1 million dragons, he would definitely fight them. But now, there was no need to fight them, because he had already achieved his goal. At this time, as long as he left this place and created a large number of God Tribulation pills, Shenzhen's strength would be able to sweep through everything and unify the immortal world. A bunch of lunatics. I only got 1 God Tribulation pill. Who knows? There might be more God Tribulation pills coming out later. There are 10 of you. Even if you kill me, there's only 1 God Tribulation pill. It's destined that only one of you will get the God Tribulation pill. Moreover, you can't kill me with your strength. If I were you, I'd give up the chase and go back. Who knows? There might be more God Tribulation pills coming out. Murong Yu's icy voice traveled far and wide, brimming with killing intent. Cut the crap. Leave the God Tribulation pill and go. Or you can die, and the pill will still be mine. Ji charged forward and attacked Murong Yu with unparalleled strength. Murong Yu's expression was one of disdain. Just as he was about to charge forward and test Ji's strength, a voice suddenly rang out in his head. A message. Ha ha ha. Murong Yu couldn't help but laugh maniacally. He knew that he was getting closer and closer to unifying the immortal world. He also knew that he would be the overlord of the immortal world. Chapter 791. I'm not going to play with you guys anymore. You guys have fun, Murong Yu suddenly said, then unfolded his body and flew off into the distance. He had already achieved his goal of coming to the Elixir King continent. Obtaining a God Tribulation elixir would allow him to create countless quasi-gods in the primal chaos Shenzhen. Even if there were more elixirs in the Elixir King continent, it wasn't important to Murong Yu. So what if there were God Deity elixirs? So what if there were more God Tribulation elixirs? That would only be a small amount. Without the Yin Yang Cauldron, they could only produce as many as they wanted. Unlike Murong Yu, they couldn't mass-produce them. Just now, Murong Yu had received news that an enforcer had appeared. Murong Yu now had 5 million Earth Dragon power. If he continued to control a few more cultivation worlds, he would become even more powerful. Then, he would be even more confident in killing Ji and the others. However, what made Murong Yu feel helpless was that just as he was about to leave, GMO chased after him. During this process, he kept killing. Murong Yu didn't even have a chance to enter the Hichu Luoshu world. Murong Yu was furious. Gee, you bastards, what's the point of chasing after me? There must be more elixirs in the Elixir King continent. Ji snorted coldly and continued to chase after him. However, the other 3 quasi-gods hesitated for a moment before stopping their pursuit. In fact, even if they caught up and killed Murong Yu, they probably wouldn't be able to obtain the God Tribulation elixir. They might as well stay on the Elixir King continent and have a chance to obtain it. You guys go back to the Elixir King continent. I'll chase after Murong Yu. Jihao transmitted his voice to the 2 quasi-gods of the Divine Union before chasing after Murong Yu alone. What do you think? Should we chase after him? The Devil Sect Master, and the other 3 communicated. Murong Yu has the Hichu Luoshu. It will be difficult to kill him. This is our best chance. Once he missed this opportunity, it would be difficult to kill him in the future. I suggest that we continue to pursue him. Even if it's not for Hichu Luoshu, we still have to kill Murong Yu. The growth of this person's strength is too terrifying, the Palace Master of the Immortal Palace said with a murderous look. Even if we can kill Murong Yu, I'm afraid we won't be able to get the Hichu Luo Shu or the God Tribulation pill. Our goal is to become a god. Don't forget that our lifespans are limited. The Holy Gate's holy leader said solemnly. He did not recommend that they pursue Murong Yu. The palace master of the Heavenly Punisher Palace, Tong Qing, looked at the other three and said indifferently, I agree with Liu Bai's opinion. Our goal is to become gods. If we can't become gods, so what if we obtain the Hichu Luoshu world? Can he help us become gods? Hichu Luoshu was indeed the #1 book in the world. But could he still increase a person's cultivation? Could it allow an immortal to ascend to godhood? That was impossible. A mere Murong Yu? Not long ago, he was still a mortal brat. How long has it been since then? And he's already on the same level as us. If we give him more time, he will be above us and trample us under his feet. The Devil Sect's sect master, Tu Wanshue, said viciously. Murong Yu's growth was simply too fast. It was so fast that they felt an intense threat from him. If you want to kill him, go ahead. I'm not interested. The palace master of the Heavenly Punisher Palace, Tong Qing, frowned slightly. In a flash, he flew back to the ruins of the Elixir King continent. Here, he was the oldest, but also the one with the shortest lifespan. It could be said that he was nearing the end of his lifespan. If he couldn't do it before the end of his lifespan, he would die. He didn't want to die because he had to pass the tribulation to become a god. But he had no confidence in passing the God Tribulation. Therefore, he had to find as many God Tribulation pills as possible. The Holy Gate's sect master pondered for a moment and then flew back. He had about the same lifespan as Tong Qing. He didn't want to waste any more time. If he didn't get the God Tribulation pills this time, he could only trigger the God Tribulation before the end of his lifespan. He had no confidence. In the end, only Ji, Tu Wanshue, and Lu Ran chased after him. At this time, they had already flown out of the Elixir King continent and entered the vast Eastern Sea. Murong Yu was fast, but the three of them weren't slow either. Murong Yu couldn't shake them off in a short period of time. This made Murong Yu a little depressed. What made him feel the most helpless was that the three of them kept attacking him. They basically cut off Murong Yu's chances of entering the Hichu Luoshu world. If it was just one person, even if it was Ji, I wouldn't be afraid and fight them. But the three of them are too strong. I'm no match for the strong ones. Murong Yu was incomparably depressed. Ao Feng, can you stop one of them? Murong Yu transmitted his voice to Ao Feng in the Hichu Luoshu world. I can stop anyone, but I can't kill them. Also, Ji seems to be stronger than a few days ago. I'm afraid I can't hold on for long. Ao Feng said helplessly. Murong Yu cursed in his heart. He was a little angry. If I can refine more cultivation worlds, my strength will become even stronger. But it seems like these guys won't let me go. Although the immortal world is big, I can't shake them off in a short period of time. These guys won't stop until they're dead. Suddenly, Murong Yu's eyes lit up. A thought came to his mind. Ao Feng, you're not the only quasi-god sea beast in the Eastern Sea, right? There aren't many quasi-god sea beasts in the Eastern Sea, but I'm not the only one. Master, what do you mean? Ao Feng was startled at first, as if he had thought of something. You seem to know what I'm going to do. Murong Yu suddenly laughed sinisterly. Lead me to the territory of another quasi-god sea beast. It's best if it has a grudge against you. Ao Feng also laughed sinisterly. Master, I have a mortal enemy called Huang Yi. He's as strong as I am. He's the sworn enemy of my sea snake clan. We've been fighting for a long time, but I can't defeat him. He's on a continent in the Eastern Sea. I'll take you there now. As he spoke, Murong Yu suddenly thought of Huang Ye's location. In the depths of the Eastern Sea. Whoosh! Murong Yu turned around and shot toward the depths of the Eastern Sea. This guy is going to the depths of the Eastern Sea? Doesn't he know how dangerous it is? The palace master of the Immortal Palace and the sect master of the demon sect frowned slightly. They knew how terrifying these unknown areas were. But Ji didn't care where it was. He was very angry now. He just wanted to kill Murong Yu. As long as he got the Hichu Luo Shu, the God Tribulation Pill would be nothing. Jika didn't want to attack Murong Yu so early. But since Murong Yu had taken the God's Tribulation Pill, he wouldn't hold back. If he killed Murong Yu, he could get the Hichu Luo Shu. He even suspected that Murong Yu had treasures that could make pills in bulk. As long as he killed Murong Yu, he could get these treasures. Therefore, he was determined to kill Murong Yu today. Even if Murong Yu fled to the ends of the earth, he would kill him until he was dead. Haha, you three bastards. You'll know what regret is in a moment. Murong Yu sneered inwardly. Whoosh! In the void, 4 figures flashed through the void one after another. Their frightening speed was so fast that even the void was being torn apart. The desolate Ho was the natural enemy of snakes. It looked like a weasel in the mortal world. However, the desolate Ho wasn't a lowly weasel. It was an ancient species left behind from the ancient times. It was very powerful. When it reached adulthood, it would have the strength of an immortal emperor or even an immortal venerable. Sometimes, it would even have the strength of a quasi-god. Above the stormy East Sea, a huge sea beast soared into the sky with a panicked expression. It rushed into the sky and tore into the distance. Just as the sea beast soared into the sky, a huge sea snake also soared into the sky and chased after the sea beast. The sea beast only had the strength of a late-stage immortal emperor. The sea snake that came after it was an immortal venerable. The sea snake was overjoyed. As long as it could devour this sea beast, it would have food for the day. However, before he could finish rejoicing, a huge yellow, furry hand suddenly reached out from the sky and grabbed at him. Desolate Ho! In an instant, the immortal venerable sea snake was stunned. It didn't even have the time to think about running away. The huge claw had already grabbed down, pressing down on the sea serpent's 7 inches. Finally, the sea snake came to its senses. However, its eyes were full of panic, and its huge body was trembling. Encountering its natural enemy in addition to the suppression of its cultivation base, the sea snake knew it was doomed. Sure enough, it didn't take long for a demonic beast that looked like a weasel to appear on the surface of the sea. Then it opened its mouth. The immortal venerable sea beast shrank rapidly and flew into its mouth. It was swallowed by the sea snake. It was the overlord of the East Sea, Desolate Ho, Hong Long. Just as he swallowed the sea snake, an incomparably powerful aura came from the horizon. Could it be that idiot AO foam again? Desolate Ho sneered in his heart, but soon his face was filled with fear. This was because he discovered that not only was there a single powerhouse charging over, there were even 3 equally powerful auras that were shooting over at high speed from behind. Oh no, is AO Foam joining forces with other quasi-god demonic beasts to attack me? Desolate Ho's expression changed drastically. However, at this moment, a towering hand smashed through space and time and slammed down at him. Desolate Ho flew into a rage and slapped out with a claw. Rumble, a powerful force sent Desolate Ho flying. It was Murong Yu who'd made the move. This was his strongest attack, and he'd consumed the power of the Bloodthirst Pill. How could Desolate Ho, who was caught off guard, be his match? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.